Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Talking Landscape Photography for tonight. We are really excited tonight to have Will Patino joining us, and he'll talk a little bit about his background, where he's sort of, I guess, it all began, and it's a really fantastic story. So really looking forward to hearing all about that. We also have Paul and Nick, the usual suspects, joining us tonight. How are you, gents?
I'm better than Nick, I think. Nick's on brain melt from some crazy work, math-based mind melding, something or other. And I just keep looking at how sexy Will looks with his maroon shirt, his sexy kind of red light, and his tan. I'm just like, it's straight out of a Valentine's Day ad or something.
Yeah, it's all in the lighting, mate. It's all about lighting.
Yes, I haven't had the best day. I'm doing a course at work, and basically today has been maths and physics and lots of equations. So I'm a little bit over today, but I'm very pleased that I'll be ending the day on a very high note, seeing Will's amazing work. So it's we'll get into it. It'll be great. What have you been up to, Paulie?
I just had 4 days on Bruni shooting. And four wonderful days, and I managed to fluke some bioluminescence.
Oh yeah, that was awesome.
I was just so I was driving past and somebody said, "Oh, can you go and shoot this soupy pink stuff? We think it's runoff from the salmon farms," and they were thinking, might be evidence of some sort of pollution. So I went down there and shot it. I just thought, in the back of my mind, I was like, "Wait a minute, is this bio?" Like, because I'm not super familiar with it, to be honest. And I went back down at about 11 o'clock, and sure enough, I was like, "Hello, sailor." And I got this whole beach to myself for like 3.5 hours till about 2 a.m. And the wind was a little bit light, so it needs agitation to come up. And I had a pair of gumboots, but that's pretty messy. It turns out if you just walk through something, the amount of time it takes for your foot to stop while the other one moves forward is enough for it to show up in the shot. So you almost have to do like this little Chinese old lady
like shuffle
or something where like each foot is moving like that. Because if you go like that and that, like you're walking normally, it doesn't work.
And I've heard other people will throw sand out in the water, and my friend Davey did that once, but he got the camera too many times and had to get that sent in. So that's another option.
You know what? I never actually thought of throwing sand in there. I tried a couple of sticks and a few big chunks of seaweed, but
another thing people do is they'll take a drink bottle and like spray or throw it onto the water as well, so that causes the agitation, or throwing in a rock. But it's a lot easier.
Give you a ring, Mikey. I should have given you a ring.
It's all right. Would have been hard to get across there at 11 at night.
I remember, like you said, I invested in a Sigma 40mm 1.8 a few weeks ago, and geez, it's I'm getting my money's worth out of that thing. It's just brilliant for night-based stuff or anything low light that you need a wide angle for. It's heavy as a brick, but it's wow, I'm stoked with it.
It's the lenses really do make a game changer for those low light shoots. There's no doubt about it. So it was a very good investment.
Yeah. Have you been up to much, Leakey?
What have I been doing? I've been doing a lot of planning for the year. I've been doing quite a bit of work on a Tscharke workshop that I'm just about to announce. So that's been pretty exciting. I'm running that with Ben Mays. So we hear a little bit more about that when that's ready to go. So yeah, I've got a very big year of different walking jobs for Great Walks of Australia. So a lot of walking photography this year, which I'm really excited about, and a few other opportunities. So so that's a lot of work, unfortunately, but I'm looking forward to going camping in the Bay of Fires this weekend. So that should be a nice little escape.
Balance grasshopper.
And then back for a few days, and then the Western Arthurs. So I'm sort of a glutton for punishment there, but anyway,
nice.
Yeah, cheers.
How's the weather looking for the trip?
Well, it's a bit far out with in southwest. It's very changeable. It looked really good initially, and then Friday looks when I'm starting, it looks a little wet. But apparently there's a high coming in after that, so it could be lucky. I'm timing it for Astro, so fingers crossed there's a clear night or two up there, but you never know. So
exactly.
Yeah, but nice. It's just being up there, really. If you come back with a shot, that's just that's a bonus, really.
I'm still getting skunked off because Lukey Lukey gave me the opportunity to turn up there and see if I could make it up that fucking hill. It's my French. It's a big walk, but I've been trying to pull off this aerial circumnavigation of South Australia for about a year and a half now with a few guys, and we're looking like we might be able to finally pull it off in that first week of March. We're just waiting to hear back from the pilot. So that's pretty exciting. We're probably going to film that and make a little doco out of that, or maybe have a group exhibition out of that. And it's kind of at the same time. So sort of like, that's been my nemesis, the Arthurs. I think it's one of the great adventures in Australia, I think, as you guys well know. And for some reason, even though I've been a wilderness guide here for 20 years, I haven't done it yet. And I'm not getting any younger. And Luke's made a few attempts. So
definitely can't say I didn't
training for it 2 years ago to go up with Lukey, and I blew my knee out. So it's just like, wow, maybe one day I might have to.
I know it's one place I'll always go back to, but there's heaps of other cool stuff as well. So, anywho, and speaking of people shooting cool stuff, Will's definitely Johnny on the spot there over in Fjordland as well. Welcome, Will.
Thanks for having me on, guys. It really means a lot, and I appreciate the opportunity. So thanks. Good to catch up with you guys.
It's our pleasure for sure. And have you been out shooting or up to much lately?
Yeah, look, I try to just stay active with my photography, and I find that I'll have spells where I might not pick the camera up for a week or two, but when that occurs, I notice that I just start to get into a bit of a funk mentally, just get a bit irritated. And that's when I just force myself to go out. But I haven't really been in that situation for 6 months now. I've been really busy the last probably 4 to 5 months, just photographing coastal scenes and just trying to come up with different ideas and exploring different coastal areas of the southwest of the South Island. So yeah, that's kept me really busy. And now I've kind of finished that and just released all those images, a big collection of coastal work. And now I'm going to switch gears and just might do a bit of intimate stuff for the first time. I'm just going to release a very small collection of intimate scenes. It's never interested me at all. And then
hanging out with Americans.
Oh,
hanging out with me. Hey.
It's kind of trendy, isn't it? It's a bit of a trend. But yeah, something in my head just switched recently, and I thought, maybe I'll just put out like 8 to 10 images. It's something that I always notice the finer details in nature when I'm out there, and I'll sometimes photograph it, but then I get home and it's just not me. It doesn't speak to me. But yeah, something in my brain's kind of switched lately. So I don't know. I think ever since I've decided I might try that the last week or so, everywhere I look, I'm seeing potential image opportunities everywhere. I'm like, there's some interesting textures and light.
Open the floodgate, Will.
Yeah, that's it. So I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I'll change my mind and get over it again. But I think that's what I'm going to concentrate on for the next month or so.
What's your definition of intimate?
I would say a landscape scene without sky would be probably the simplest way to put it. Now, I've got so many images like that already. So maybe you could go to a further extreme and, it's not only without the sky, but then you're concentrating on specifically textures and the substance that makes up a greater subject matter, essentially. So instead of necessarily photographing a tree, I'm going to photograph the bark of the tree or something like that. So that's kind of a pretty rough definition. But I think removing the sky first and foremost, but then going a bit tighter again and, looking at the actual matter that comprises the green landscape. The good thing is you don't have to go far for this stuff, like what I normally do is, thousands of kilometers up and down all over the place. Whereas this, it's like, I'm just walking around town in my backyard and I'm just observing things where I'm like, if you zoomed in on that, there's an image right there ready to be made. So it's quite a different approach. Probably be refreshing, not having to wait for certain conditions. Really, probably an overcast sky will be my best friend. No, I don't have to worry about contrasty light or anything and just get out there. So we'll see. I'll probably get over it, but I'll get
minimizing the carbon footprint.
Sorry, you go, Paul.
Minimizing the old carbon footprint. Yeah. Just walk down the road.
Exactly. Hey, that's it, man.
I was just thinking around with the intimates too. Like it's good to have that as it sort of augments the grand landscapes really well and helps to tell more of a story of where you're from, and also it's good for a book or something like that too. Just offset it, not always being about grand landscapes. It depends on what you're kind of going for with that kind of thing. But it's just nice to have that variety available.
I would say like each year I might release anywhere from 50 to 100 new images, and I always have maybe 5 like intimate shots in there anyway. But this is going to be the first time where I'm just going to go out and concentrate on specifically making, but not enough for a book or anything like that. But yeah, more just to kind of complement what I do already. It's just something in my brain kind of has become interested in it briefly, but I think it'd be short-lived. But anyway, we'll give it a go and see if I have some fun doing it. Like I said, I've done it before, but I get home and I look at the files and it's just not the right chord for me. It just doesn't strike. You know, I have fun shooting it. I just like using the camera in general. But then when I come to process it, I'm like, nah, this is not, I'm not feeling this.
Yeah.
This could still happen anyway. We'll see how we go. But that's kind of where my head's at the moment anyway. Change of pace.
The way I sort of do intimates is combine it with, wider images. So I'll go somewhere for a sunrise, and sunrise is probably the best example, where you go there for a specific sort of idea of capturing a bigger landscape, and then once that event is over, then I might spend an hour or two in that area wandering around, looking at the foregrounds in detail and seeing what's there. And if I'm going somewhere that's quite spectacular, there might already be some really beautiful geology or plants or something else in the area. So I find that the easiest way that I find those sort of images is to go out to a specific place to do a specific thing, and then when that's over, then just sort of have a wander around and just see what takes your fancy. I've gone out a few times, well, plenty of times, and just sort of gone for intimate stuff, but it's often because the sunset that you're going out for, the sunrise, just isn't happening. There's nothing happening with the light or whatever, and so you look for other things so you don't feel it's a waste of time. But you can easily combine the two things.
Yeah, and that's what I do on a workshop, for example. I'm often showing people how to look for these images and maximize being at a location. You could get a fiery sunrise and an amazing sky and capture a big grand scene. And then you could throw on a telephoto and get some intentional camera movement on the waves on the lake, for example. And now you've got 2 completely different images, maximizing your time at the same location. So yeah, it is a good way, and it slows you down, and it just makes you become more of an observer, observing those details. But to me, I like drama. I like to feel, that something, a pounding in the chest, when I'm looking at something and I'm physically just floored. And I guess that's what I try and put through my imagery as well. So it will be a change of pace. It's like if you like heavy music and then you decide to put a jazz record on once in a blue moon, so we'll see.
Yeah, no.
Before we head on, there's just one thing you said right at the beginning when you were talking about what intimates were, and I've never heard anybody describe it that way, that the matter of what makes up a landscape. And it's just got me thinking that the whole last kind of 5 minutes, like what an amazingly interesting way to engage with landscape.
Well, you put me on the spot, mate. I was like, crap, how do I define it? But as I was envisioning it, that's what it is. Hey, it's zoning in on those individual things that all come together, the individual members that create one bigger body. And that can be broken down on the tiniest of levels, the macro type stuff. And then we keep coming out. And then eventually you're going to get to a point essentially where, okay, maybe it's no longer intimate, but there's definitely a huge zone in between there that you can explore all those different little realms, world within worlds, I kind of think of it sometimes.
Yeah, I've heard like the picture within the picture is another way to
We're getting good, guys.
I've got a good location here that I found a couple of years ago, and I released like an intimate shot. It's some of that iridescent sheen that it comes out of the
oils.
decaying trees. And it's just this magic little spot that I found along the lake. And yeah, it's just, I went there the other day to have a look, and it's back, and it's quite phenomenal. But it's a type of stuff you see a lot of the American guys doing I think they do a lot of that in like Zion and some of those Canyonland type locations. But yeah, it's pretty phenomenal. When you first look at it.
Eric Bennett's got a lot of incredible.
Yeah, he does. Yeah. I got to pluck off a few leaves and just strategically
and get your little sprayer out as well.
Yeah, that's it.
Don't do that, Will. Don't do that.
No. Only the ones on the ground already, mate. Only those ones on the ground, the dead ones.
Well, we've got this space tonight for you, and we're going to have a pretty fluid show and just follow the conversation as where it goes. But it is an opportunity for you to kind of share, express kind of anything you want about who you are as a person, you know, as an artist, as a professional, you know, what you see as a role it has in your life, you know, how it's, you know, we've connected with it in the last show or another show about where it sits with well-being, you know, how your family engages with, you know, your lifestyle, you know, all the way back from that incredibly brave choice to move down there and move over there and sort of pursue something that, you know, many people must have thought you're pretty nuts to give that a go. And I'm personally really intrigued and really amazed by the caliber of your production values and someone like as good as anyone in the world. And I was like, how's this guy down on the bottom end of the world just producing this world caliber stuff? And you know, having been a Kiwi and grown up shooting there for 25 years, I have still had no idea where most of the places are that you're shooting, but I'm pretty sure I'll never get there in my life as well. So there's kind of, I just thought I'd open the door, and we're going to use your sort of website as a bit of a load point if we want to go back to it, but really opportunities for us and the conversation to go wherever you want to go. So hats off and thank you for giving us the time, and thank you family too for letting us take you off your hands for a bit.
Yeah, well, the kids are in bed now, so we're all sweet. But thanks. I'm an open book, boys. So you know, I'm looking forward to just having a chat, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, and I guess for you know, some of the people watching that may not be familiar with your work and your story, I suppose. I'm very keen for you to tell about how you sort of started out with photography, and I mean, it really is a story of you know, if you believe you can achieve kind of scenario. And did you want to sort of
absolutely
reflect on that?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it brief. I have a tendency to ramble on.
Just whatever aspects you feel drawn to.
Yeah. Look, you know, if I was going to like shorten it up a bit, you know, go back to say late 2011, I was married, living in Wollongong, where I was born and raised on the south coast of New South Wales there. I was a tradesman, an air conditioning mechanic, and my wife worked at a local bank. So happily married, double income, no kids. Life was good on paper, and seemingly out of the blue, I was diagnosed with depression, and it was something that it kind of crept up on me. And then when it hit like a ton of bricks. And you know, when you go through something like that, it's going to be different for everyone. For me, it was like a constant weight on my shoulders, a constant cloud over my head, no color in life. Felt like running away. I didn't know where, but you know, very, very scary, and feeling like I was losing control of my own mind. It was just a terrifying place. And during that period in time, I saw doctors and things like that, and psychologists, and that really helped getting it off my chest and speaking with people. And during that time, I happened to pick a camera up. We went to Europe on a holiday, which we almost canned because I thought I can't go overseas. You know, I was bedridden. I couldn't get out of bed at one point. You know, it was terrible. And one of the doctors I was speaking to really said, look, mate, you've got to go get out of the cycle you're in, go on this holiday, blah, blah, blah. So with that holiday, we purchased a Canon 550D with the twin lens, you know, the classic 18 to 55, the 55 to 250.
55 to 250, yeah.
And it was actually my wife's idea. She said we should get a good camera because we're doing this holiday, and she did most of the research on what to get. And I remember flying to Europe, and I was like, I'll take control of the camera, you know. I've never used one, you know. And I remember reading the instruction manual on the plane, and so during that holiday, I had a good 6 weeks over there, and it was good for my mental health, just a change of environment. And I found I was quite drawn to using the camera. So fast forward, the holiday ends, the camera goes back in the cupboard, wasn't really thinking about it. And then around that late 2011, so that was mid 2011, late 2011, I happened to download Instagram, which hadn't even heard of it. No one had heard of it. You know, you couldn't even pronounce the name right. It was so foreign. And I didn't have Facebook. Everyone was on Facebook. I didn't have that. And I downloaded Instagram looking for a mate's photos, a skateboarding mate, because I had a skateboarding background and used to enjoy doing some video type stuff with my mates. I downloaded the app looking for his still shots. I just put photography in the app store. Instagram came up. And I started seeing landscape photos on there, and I was like, that looks pretty cool, you know. And in hindsight, they're probably crazy HDR, real, you know, but it really spoke to me. And I thought, oh, I've got that camera in the cupboard. Maybe I should get that out and have a play in the backyard or something. So I started doing that. And like most people that pick up a camera, I got hooked straight away. And what the camera did for me was it made me view the world in an entirely different way. And it started to bring that color back into my life again. And I remember going down the beach one morning for a sunrise, which was extremely rare for me to get up for a sunrise. And I just remember watching that sun as it first breached the horizon and it's lighting up the cloud. And, you know, I get goosebumps talking about it now because it was a moment that changed me forever. It was a moment that I kind of made this mental note of saying, I'm going to keep doing this because I need to be doing this. There was like a voice almost. And it just went from there. And I started sharing my photography on Instagram. And back then there was a good community because there wasn't that many people on there. There was maybe a couple of 100,000 instead of hundreds of millions. So it was good to, you know, just share your work and get feedback and look at what other people were doing. You know, when you start out, it's like you find other people that are doing the same thing as you and you're like, man, and you latch onto it. So that was also really good for the morale and just encouraging me to keep doing what I was doing. So in a pretty short period of time, because I was going out every single day for sunrise, just about, because I loved it, and I didn't start work until 8 o'clock. In Wollongong, you can get to Cathedral Rocks, Bombo Quarry. I started exploring the coastline like never before. You know, I'd lived there my whole life and I'd never even seen these places. And curiosity and exploration was at the core of what I enjoyed most. It was that, what is around the corner here? What if I get there and this happens? Or what if I go there and the light does this? And that got me out of bed. You know, it didn't matter if I was tired. It was that thought of, yeah, but what if everything comes together? And sure enough, it slowly does over time. So after about 2 years is when I went full time. And during that 2-year window of picking up a camera and then more or less making it full time, I started getting the odd like early influencer type opportunities, like very early on, because I had, 10,000 followers, which at one point in time, it was probably in the top 10 of all of Australia. There's no celebrities on there. There's hardly any businesses. So someone like me that can take a half okay photo, it started to stand out. Me and a select few of other photographers in a similar position. So I started getting a few opportunities to make a few bucks from going to some amazing places and just photographing it and putting it on my Instagram. And then you sell the odd print, and I started teaching. I started running workshops on the weekend, sunrise workshop, sunsets. I was getting requests and I was saying no because I was terrified and I didn't think I could teach anyone. Eventually I bit the bullet and said, you know what, I'll give it a go. So I was doing that, and then my son was born. So I went from being full-time tradesman, photography as my absolute love and passion and something that was a tool to, make me a better man, really. And now being a father, and it was like, wow, something's got to give. You've only got so many hours in the day. And the thought of putting photography on the side after all that it had given me, I'm an all or nothing guy. I've got a very addictive personality. And when I commit to something, that's what I do. I'm all in. And I thought, I'm either stopping photography 100% or it has to be my everything. And I thought, if I'm going to go for it, now's the time. And I had opportunities, over that period in time where people were like, oh, you're going to go full time and blah, blah, blah. And I was not interested at all. I never picked the camera up to make money from it or have a career. I only thought about that 2 weeks before I made it a reality. Everything before that was, the goal is to be a better photographer and express myself and do justice to what I'm seeing and experiencing. That was the only goal. That's all I cared about. I didn't care about social media, getting numbers on there. It was like, man, these photos are not good enough still. I got to go back and make it better. And I'm fueled by that, knowing that there's always something out there in nature that is right now. I know right now, actually, the full moon is rising out there and it excites me. And I always think, what an amazing thing. How can I capture that and, express something about it? So I took that leap, and the business model for me was teaching. I've always enjoyed the education side of things, and I've always enjoyed keeping my photography for me and not shooting for anyone else. It's too personal for me to be a commercial photographer, for example. My soul is not in it. Creativity is not there. It's always been it's an expressive thing. So I figured if I teach, that still allows me to create the images that I always have, the ones that come from within. And the only way to find out if it was going to work was to quit and go for it. So had a 3-month-old baby. My wife was left her job to be a mum. And I said, okay, let's run our own business. And
deep end, hello.
Yeah. And that was it. And look, the pressure, the immense pressure from peers and in-laws and just everyone, I felt this like judgment of what's this guy doing, because that looks very selfish. I know it does, but I knew it was actually going to give me more time to be at home, even though there'll be periods where I won't be. But when I was going to be there properly. And I also knew it was going to make me a better man. I knew that it was the path I had to go down. And the cycle I was in before that, the way my work ethic when I was a tradie, it was just not a good, it wasn't a good place to be, even for my mental health. Even though I'd somewhat come through depression by this stage, a lot of it, the hard stuff, there was still a bit of a depressive cycle going on in my work environment. So leaving, it was going to open up and make me, someone that I truly feel like I was meant to be. And I haven't looked back, and it's been 7 years now doing it full time. Picked up the camera about 10 years ago. So it was a pretty turbulent first few years there. And then along that journey, we've moved to New Zealand as well, which was about 4.5 years ago. And that's a very similar type thing where something's pulling on my heart. And I just couldn't ignore it. And I thought, well, life's too short. It's a cliche, but life's too short. I don't want to have regrets when I'm older. I'd rather try and fail than not try at all and just have that regret burning away. So we ended up moving down to Tscharke, which is basically the gateway to Fjordland National Park, the biggest national park in New Zealand. And, I'm sure people have seen the photographs by now, but this is a place to me that the first time I came here, it was like coming home. There was something about it. It was again, like that first sunrise moment. Fjordland was like, I'd been here before, even the first time I came here, it was almost like a strange, like a revelation. So after coming to New Zealand 20 times after that first time, it just got to the point where when I'd fly back to Australia, it no longer felt like home. So thankfully my supportive wife, and she's got a similar mindset to me, and she was willing to take that leap of faith again. And we've been down here ever since. And, it's been so beneficial for both of us living here, and from a family perspective, and me from an artistic perspective, mentally, and even from a business perspective, which was no intention at all, really, but it's even benefit in that small way as well, just being located where I am. So it's just been, when I reflect back, I'm a lighthearted guy, but I'm quite deep at the same time. I've got like a yin yang thing, and I'm just thankful every day for, just the little things. Like I look out and see the mountains each day and the light hitting them, and I don't know. The last 2 years with COVID and everything, and it's just really reminded me that what matters is what's here in front of your eyes. It's not really what's on the screen, what the media is saying, blah blah blah. The important stuff is, it's material. It's right there. We can touch it. We can see it. We can breathe it. And I've really been concentrating a lot on that recently. And it's just made me so thankful for each and every day, because that's all we have, right? We don't have tomorrow. All we have is right now. So that's what, I've gone off on a bit of a spin, but
no,
when's the book coming out, mate?
It's funny you mentioned that. I think it's about time as well. So that's going to be a project. My wife will start doing a bit of legwork on getting the wheels in motion for that. That's something that I've put off for years. I've had people ask, and it just never felt like the right time. I wasn't happy enough with my work. I didn't think it was a good idea business-wise. And then, just like I said before, this was another, just a switch just changed recently where I said, maybe it is the right time now. So, we're going to kind of be excited about that. Hey, another project to work on. And with the borders being shut here for so long, it's allowed me to start to explore possibilities like that as well. When the borders are open, I'm a little bit busier running my workshops over here, because my clients can get into the country. And you don't really have time to necessarily be sitting down and thinking of books and making tutorials, which is a big part of what I do now. So, there's been a lot of blessings that have come out of something that seemingly at first was, quite scary. So it's actually
must have been very scary, because I know, like, if you're running workshops, and that's, the idea of having them in the calendar is that you can rely on that income in the future. And then all of a sudden you just lose that overnight. And it looks like you've pivoted and gone much more towards the obviously makes sense online tutorials and that kind of thing. Do you want to, can you reflect on that maybe and how you feel about that?
I had a business that was 90% guiding and education, which is workshops, and maybe 10% online with tutorials, for example, income-wise. And then with COVID, something had to change pretty dramatically. And now for the past year and a half, I've got a business that's 90% passive and online and 10% in the field if I do a private workshop or something like that. And, when it first all kicked off, scary. Look, it's been hard the whole time because some of my trips book out over a year in advance and people are paying deposits, people are paying off their workshops long before the trip even happens. So, we definitely found ourselves in a hard position because my wife stays at home. She runs the house. She takes care of the food, everything. She's a stay-at-home mum and she runs the back end of what I do with, all the nasty stuff that I don't like dealing with invoicing and admin work. So I'm the sole provider for 2 kids and a wife and a mortgage. And to have that happen, to be honest, I never really felt like panicked or alarmed. I had a faith that we'll get through this one way or another. And I was willing to do whatever it took. I'll go work down at the supermarket if we have to. I'm not too proud to do that if it comes to, surviving. But we've been able to make it work by pivoting and just putting more resources. I've made so much more curriculum with tutorials. I was so fortunate that in 2019, I made about 8 hours worth a landscape masterclass, a solid 8 hours of what happens when you get your camera out of the box. What is manual mode? How do I explain manual mode? What is it? How does it work? And then going right through different scenarios, processing everything like that. I had that created in 2019. So that really helped us initially. And then...
Oh, no.
Oh, we just get the freeze. Jeez, I thought it was me for a second, boys, because it's normally me.
Normally is.
Just lost Will for a minute. We'll try and get him back.
Yeah, no, that's a real shame. Hopefully it's just a camera issue and he can reset that and we're back on deck. Just
what I've really appreciated so far, and how quickly and how easily someone like Will, it just speaks so authentically and so honestly about everything. That's the sign of someone who's knows himself well, who's been through a lot, who has a lot of courage. And really, what's really struck me about Will's story, getting that reminder, is how true to his heart he's been. Those are really big, scary decisions to make. 3-month-old baby, throwing aside a consistent income for complete unknown, moving to the bottom of the middle of nowhere in a foreign country, away from family, with a young child. Like they're really courageous things to do. So hats off to Will for sort of being who he is. And quite a while ago now, it's almost seems so long ago, hard to remember. Like we pulled together the episode with Will and Ricardo and who else was it?
Adam, was it? Adam Williams, maybe. I can't remember.
I'm not sure if it was 2 like-collected guys. It was definitely Ricardo, but it was on kind of that really authentic, and I thought it was quite appropriate during COVID because I think mental illness or the challenges of mental health were a little bit more exacerbated during COVID time. And we decided, with people like Will that are really courageous and open, people like Ricardo that are the same, and Lukey and myself, and to just put it all out on the table. And it's people like Will and kind of the just the trueness and genuineness of and vulnerability that they're happy to sort of be open to share, that has sort of empowers people to, I guess, be more present and courageous about it all. And the more we are, then the more easy it is for everyone else to be able to talk about it and to take the stigmas away and to be able to support each other. And
one thing we can do, Paul, while Will's reconnecting, is we can go through his website and still appreciate his images, and that might be a nice thing to do.
Yeah, that's a great idea,
especially for viewers that aren't familiar with Will's work. So, and then hopefully when he does jump on, he can speak to them as well. And I mean, God forbid he can't make it back on. At least we've got we can talk about his work. So here we go. You guys can see the screen okay?
Yeah. Do we want to start away from his new work to his...
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So you'll want to talk about
good idea, no? Because probably if we get him back, it'd be nice to get him to introduce.
Yeah, so he's arranged his work basically by different, I guess, thematic, I suppose you could say. Is there a particular theme? I mean, I feel like the Ocean's Edge is really where Will started, so that might be a really good place for us to start. I mean, he was up every morning. I was following him on Instagram. He was up very frequently.
Is this new stuff though?
I think most of it is actually.
Don't start there then.
I think Will's just rejoining us now, so he might be able to help us out. There is some stuff here from Wollongong. It's interesting the different sea stacks he's been able to find over the course of his career there. So I certainly recognise.
You have to unmute there, Will.
Certainly recognise.
Sorry about that, boys.
You're right.
Okay, the battery run out.
No, I think my wife closed the blinds inside and it's hit the modem and spun the antennas and anyway, I had to sprint in. I've got like a little studio thing out the front, like a cabin, and anyway, I hope we should be fine now. Sorry about that.
That's all right, no worries.
Just done, while you're off is we just had a bit of a dialogue, and then I brought up your website just obviously to look at your images while you're reading.
And Nick was really adamant, as he should have been, that we don't go through any of the new work without you. So.
Okay.
Yeah, but well, then it does look like it is relatively mixed in here too, Will. Is that right? That you've got kind of, this is in your Ocean's Edge gallery.
Yeah. Well, where would you like to start, Will? If you have
please.
If we were going to maybe start having a look at Truth and Things, where would you like to start?
Probably the mountain section, because that's what I primarily do, and then maybe the new work, because the new work's all the new coastal stuff. But I'm kind of a mountain man at heart. One of the reasons moving over here was the mountains.
I was going to say, not too many mountains in Wollongong.
Yeah, they speak to me a lot more than what the ocean does. I have a love for both, but I think my photography is probably characterized more by the mountain scenery, I'd say. What I was saying before I cut out was more just, pivoting from with the, we basically had to spend money to make money, something which most businesses have to do and something that I'd never done in the past. And by doing that, it's kind of been a lifesaver. So that's kind of kept us afloat and kept food on the table. So it's been an interesting 2 years, but I'm just so thankful to still be here, still being able to use a camera for a living and do this is just.
Well, how did you sort of, because as I complimented you earlier, the production values on your work is beautiful, and the design aspects and just a look and aesthetic and feel of how you present all that kind of online material is quite pretty up there. Is that something you taught yourself? Do you have a background in it?
No, so this is the guys that I've partnered with. So this team that I use with my marketing basically, and they handle all of that side. And it's stuff that I wanted to do, but just didn't have the time or resources or anything. So that's what the whole COVID scenario has allowed me to do, is to go down that road and invest, time and money and work with people that do this for a living, purely for photographers with courses as well. So it's nice. It's so nice to just be able to petition an aspect, yourself, any creative that does it full time, you're more than just, the part where using a camera is like 20%, then there's so many other avenues, and there's got to be a breaking point eventually. So it's just amazing. Even there's a support team. So if there's issues with the tutorials, those guys handle it. And it's just freed me up to be able to keep doing what I do. I go out and make the stuff and film it, and I've got to edit video and do all that and whatnot, but then at least I can eventually shelve one aspect of it. Whereas before, I'm the technical assistant, I'm the guy trying to deal with all these other issues, and there's only so much you can do. So it's been.
Did you find that initially difficult? I guess there's an outlay involved initially, but I guess you recoup that pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's actually my commission-based thing with these guys, which is great, because there's an incentive for them to actually get results. Look, to be honest, the hardest thing for me is, I know pretty much anyone that's listening to this would have seen one of my ads, and that has been the hardest thing for me, is being a guy that's done everything organically and probably spent $100 in 10 years on an ad, to now coming up on ads all the time. And I felt like a bit of a sellout. But then the whole pinnacle moment was for me saying, it's too bad. It's feed your family, or don't. So that was the thing I had to do. And yeah, like I still find it awkward. I'll see my ads popping up, and I'm like, man, they get away. I don't want.
Do you think that's a bit of an Aussie thing, Will?
I think it is, to be honest. I know in America, the Americans, it's a different approach. We've got the tall poppy syndrome here. Like if you're trying to promote yourself and what you're doing, it's like, go away, mate. Like, get over yourself. And when it comes to marketing, you kind of need to do that. And that's been, it's just been hard for me to accept that. Well, it was initially. I'm kind of over it now because it's like, it's been a lifesaver, and I'm happy to wear that now.
Yeah. Well,
initially that was hard.
You've explained, Will, that your business went from 10% online and 90% out in the field running workshops to 90% online and 10% in the field. Just simply because you had to, you've got to run a mortgage, you got to, feed your family and all that sort of thing. And you've done exactly what you need to do. You had a good think about it. And you went, right, COVID's hit. No one can come to my workshops. What am I going to do? And
bring workshops to them.
And you've done exactly what you needed to do. And you're right about the tall poppy syndrome and the Australian sort of attitude towards things. And no doubt some people will have seen your ads and gone, oh, another Will Patino ad. What's he doing? But you've explained it completely succinctly, and it makes absolute sense. I mean, even if it didn't make absolute sense from the COVID point of view, you're still running a business.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing that I just had to wrap my head around. It's like, look, this is a business. It's a career at the end of the day. It's got to...
Well, if I jump in there, like I haven't felt that way when I've seen your ads. And now I sort of haven't really thought about why, but now that I think about it now, they come across as very refined and elegant and professional. And there's a subtlety to the color palette that kind of, from a psychological point of view, it's not like screaming in your face.
The softness.
It's actually it's more invitational. It's kind of has that feeling and that aesthetic to it. So it has a quiet but elegant presence that invites you in, and I guess that's one of the qualities that has really stood out to me for a while. Whenever I see the opportunity to engage with your sort of online work come up, it really stands out.
Cool.
In really beautiful ways. Not stands out in your face, but stands out with its
you guys will relate to this, but I'm really thankful to get comments each week, whether it's an email or a message, and people saying really enjoyed your course or your webinar. And, I know it's helping people, and there's a money back guarantee. So if it sucks, I can just get a refund, but it's really helping people. I like
that. Oh, money back if you think it sucks.
Yeah, basically. Today. No questions, mate. If it sucks, just get a money back. But you get that one comment maybe once a month. And I don't really see these because I don't keep an eye on the ads. That's handled by the other guys. But I will see it in my social feed. And you'll just get these random ones where it's just like scam, or this is a scam, or stuff like that. And some of the time it's people because they put in the wrong email when they tried to get their free product. The free product never arrived. So now they jump on Facebook and start blasting in the comments that it's a scam. And then when the support teams chased them up, they left out a letter from their email, and they're like, oh, sorry, my bad. And I'm like, well, you've just left these comments here and that stuff just cuts me. I'm an emotional guy. And so I can get 1,000 positive comments, but once there's a negative thing like that, and I just don't look at it. I just choose not to look at it because that stuff, it's so naive, but it still just gets to me. So I'm getting a thicker skin. I'm getting a thicker
on the radar.
Yeah, but you guys would have seen it. You get it on your photos.
Price of fame.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, fame, mate.
Oh yeah, the more you put yourself out there, the more you leave yourself exposed.
Yeah, exactly. And that's that's how it is. It's just a small thing, but we live in a world where everyone's a keyboard warrior, and I'm like, mate, have you thought about the fact that I'm just trying to sell a product here? I'm trying to feed my family. I'm not a big business. I'm just we're husband and wife team, there's no, but people are just pretty quick to just, get off my feed and all this. And but that's the world we live in, and whatever, like, it's not a big deal, but it's something that every now and then you just go, oh man, that kind of bums me out a bit.
Well, I mean, it's more a reflection of them than it is of you, Will. So it's easy to say. And to be honest, I'd feel the same way. I'd hold a lot of sensitivity to that for the same reasons.
Maybe you could move to like, sides of a bus or some billboards or something
Yeah,
like that.
exactly.
Just keep it out of the feeds, mate.
The graffiti will come out then, mate. There'll be some graffiti.
Yeah.
But no, but look, long story short, I'm just thankful that I've still been able to make it work and, take advantage of the age we live in where we've got people, just the digital age in general, the technology we have and the ways you can make money as a landscape photographer there's just so many different avenues you can go down and you can kind of pick what suits you the most and what's going to be, most organic for you to do. And I love teaching and I love running workshops. And since I haven't been able to do as many, for me now, when I look at the camera and I'm filming myself, I just do it in one take most of the time because when I'm speaking to the camera, I'm almost envisioning the people, thousands of people that are eventually going to see that. So I'm still getting that same fulfillment that I get out of teaching. And even YouTube, I've got stuff on YouTube now. And it's really helped me there just to keep being able to express my thoughts and the way that I view the world. And I learned so much through teaching, even just teaching through looking at a camera, because you're just having to analyze everything so much more than normal. And it's been a good thing for me actually to be able to do that. So I'm glad that I've been able to keep that fire going and just keep thinking about it and analyzing imagery and what it is to make a landscape photograph.
And you've been looking down cameras a lot. I mean, I've followed you for a long time, and back in the Snapchat days and stories
exactly.
and things like that, you've been very used to having your face on there, and talking to the camera. I really wondering when you're going to bring your comedy series back, like with mandarins and like.
Oh, it's funny, mate. Like I've had people mention that.
Tell us about it.
It's just
in jokes.
I don't even know how I did that now, but yeah, mate, I just used to get a bit silly on Snapchat and just real lighthearted stuff and. I don't know. I just can't do it anymore. It's like I don't have the drive to do it. It was just a period in time. And every now and then people will message me and say, bring back the Snapchat or something. But it just kind of moved on. It was just a different moment in time there. But it was good fun while it lasted. But I think just with social media just being the beast it is, I have lost the drive to even, just do that because that people are watching it and they're forgetting it within 5 seconds. So it's a whole time management thing. And I guess back then I only had one child. He was young. So I just had a bit more time up my sleeve in general. Whereas now it's like, I'm struggling to find the time to put something out there. I'm like, I better share something today. And it's just all a jumble. So I think that probably plays into it a bit as well. And I know you guys could relate to that. There's just so much stuff screaming for our attention. And you can only, direct it at so many avenues. And
do you get into post scheduling and things like that just to manage that, or you still do everything? I remember you used to do everything live, almost like as a rule.
Yeah, well, I still do for Instagram, and I tried the post scheduling on Facebook a few months ago, and I was like, wow, this is a game changer. This is great. So I'd sit down and schedule 3 weeks worth of posts with captions. And I just forgot to do that recently. So Facebook gets pretty neglected. Most stuff is still live in the moment. I'm not against the scheduling, particularly on Facebook, where it's just a whole different platform in itself. So definitely not against it. But I probably wouldn't bother doing it for Instagram or anything. But I think, you've just reminded me that I should sit down and get it going again for Facebook, that's for sure. But it's hard, isn't it? It's hard to stay on top of it all, but that's just a part of the job. It's just what it is. So
it's managing priorities, really, isn't it? There's so many things you can do. I always say the world's your oyster, but holy shit, the world's my oyster. Like it's a double-edged sword there. You can do whatever you like, but then what do you choose to do? So that can be a real problem sometimes as well.
Well, in regards to that, are you finished, Nicky?
Yeah.
I was just going to say, like, one of the aspects of being in a position that you're in is the level of self-motivation that you have. That how do you sort of, all the content you're creating is self-driven, pretty much everything you do is self-driven. And how do you, how do you maintain that? What's underneath that? I mean, I guess you've got, there's elements of your creative, expressive self and elements of, looking after your family. But at the same time, it takes a lot of discipline and goal setting or things to really maintain a very consistent capacity to make a living out of landscape photography. And, not many people sort of, to be honest, do it as well as you, I don't think, in modern times. And to me, it's sort of like, I feel like I've got a bit to learn to someone from yourself, because I keep thinking, geez, I never thought of that, or I probably could do that, but Will's actually doing it, and he's doing it well. And I was thinking, geez, how do you keep the drive going and constantly looking and searching? And, you know, as soon as you said, oh, yeah, there's a million avenues to make money as a landscape photographer, I was like, geez, maybe I should go hang out with Will for a while because I'm still trying to figure that out, mate.
Let me clarify that I don't like money. You know, money, I had to have this talk with my son. I'm like, mate, we just need it to live and just live a comfortable life and help others. And, you know, I'm probably a businessman. There's a part of me that enjoys business, not really my business, but I just like businesses in general. I've got mates that own businesses and I'm just really fascinated by it. But if it was going to come down to the drive and the motivation, yeah, there's a part where you do it or you don't pay the bills and feed the family. Of course, that's there. But if I shelve that, honestly, at the underlying core of what drives me, and it's been this since pretty much day one, is the love for what nature gives me and experiencing those moments. I just, I've lost count of the amount of things I've photographed and times I've gone out with the camera, but it still always feels like the first time. I get that giddy excitement of, man, I can't wait to go and try photograph this place or just go see it first and foremost. And that just keeps driving me. There's just people over the years, it's one of the popular interview questions, isn't it? You know, what's your inspiration? Where do you get inspiration? And for me, it's just been nature. It's just the way that nature does its thing, the way that the sun rises, the way that the shadows are cast across the mountains. And, you know, there's innumerable things that I could mention, and that moves me in a way that I can't even express. And that's where the camera comes in. That's me saying, all right, how can I just show you what I'm feeling and experiencing in these moments? That's the inspiration right there, is the desire to keep seeing and experiencing that. And it's a spiritual thing for me too. You know, I'm connecting with something far grander and greater than all of us. And it just brings me a little bit closer to what I consider the bigger picture there. So it's like a constant chasing. It's almost like a chasing after the wind. I'm never going to get there, but I enjoy that process of attempting it. You know, it's almost like you're just attempting to, yeah, it's hard to explain, but
to me, it's like a bit of a bucket that has a sieve at the bottom. So you get out there and you fill it up, but as soon as you stop, it starts draining away until you go back out and fill it up again. And it's just, and the more you do it, the more present you are as to what level the bucket's at the time and what you're going to do about it. So, Will, in terms of visual context to that, you talk about the mountains being one of your great inspirations. Should we sort of start there visually and
sure,
maybe carry on that conversation about how that
share back again
that translates into reality for you? Because you know, the mountains of the southwest of New Zealand in particular are kind of almost like nowhere in the world. But I also, just having a look through some of your galleries, somehow you've managed to create galleries that have this incredible overlapping fluidity, and yet they're different places of the world.
Yeah, so like with my website,
stacks before, I was like, wait a minute, that's like Wollongong, that's like Fjordland, that's like Northwest, and I'm like, what? And they could almost overlap, and I was like, how do you even do that? But
yeah, well, the layout of the gallery, the website is, the way I photograph is based the last 5-6 years. I'm just shooting all the time. My files go on the computer. I start processing, and that will continue for about 4 to 5 months. And then when I've got a body of work together, and usually there's no theme, it's just new work 2020 part 1 or something like that. And it's just a random assortment of what I've been up to that last 4 or 5 months. And then it just goes on the website. It'll sit in the new work section. And then eventually when I get more new work, all that stuff moves into the corresponding category. So there's no real rhyme or reason with the layout of the actual website. Obviously, it's predominantly South Island, New Zealand now, majorly the last, you know, since I've lived here, really. I don't really go anywhere else. I've done multiple trips to Iceland and Patagonia, but yeah, the bulk of my portfolio is Fjordland. When I release new work, you know, it could be anywhere from 25 to 40 images. I still assess the overall body almost like an album, like a musician creating an album. And I just, you know, make sure that there's nothing doubling up too much or repetitive, and is everything providing and bringing something new to the table to some degree. That's kind of my criteria of what is going to go in the portfolio, because that's all I shoot is obviously portfolio work. So I'm always trying to, I'm mentoring a few people, and I said to one of them today, you got to keep trying to one up yourself, like there's no point really repeating what you've done in the past. There can always be similarities, of course, but if you deep down don't feel like you've just raised the bar, even if it's just by a centimeter, then that's how I know it gets deleted, and I'll remove it from my drafts folder where it could have been sitting for 2 months. So when I look at it and say, you know what, is that really bringing anything new here? The answer is no. All right, just delete it. And that's the benefit of letting it sit in a draft folder for several weeks and several months, is you lose that emotional connection. When you first shoot something, you're pretty determined to make it work, but letting it sit there a while, you can eventually just look at it very objectively and say, you know what, that's just not worth sharing, and you can delete it and forget about the fact that maybe it took 4 days to capture or whatever it may be. And then eventually I go through the website as you guys would, and I just delete old stuff that you somewhat feel doesn't have a place anymore. But I try not to do that too much, because I feel like you should always have something showcasing your journey along the way, but it does get thinned out, of course, over the years.
It does strike me as a rather unique thing still. I mean, I think most people are sort of drip feeding their images out there, and it is really refreshing to have photographers like yourself that release a body of work at the same time, and really allows you to pour through it and appreciate a larger quantity of images, because normally what we're doing is we're just scrolling past, one individual images. So it's nice to see it together as a collection. And then I guess you're sort of doing it the other way around and as well. Like you've got the whole body of shots there that people can review at once, but then you can also drip feed those back out onto social media or put them in carousels, which often do quite well too. So it's just quite a different approach as far as I can see. And I think it's a really, really brilliant way of doing it too.
That's how I've always enjoyed seeing other people's work, was being able to sit back and see, what have you been up to the last X amount of time? Or I like to think of it like music. I'd rather a band sit back and work hard on a new album for 6 to 12 months, and then you're waiting, like, when's this album going to drop? And then bang, and I can sit down and enjoy it from front to back, as opposed to a band trying to release a single every month. It's so different, and the standard's going to slip because they're trying to keep feeding the beast, Whereas if you can go away and take your time and then eventually showcase what you've been up to, I think for the creator it's way better, and also as the viewer. And at the end of the day, you said it perfectly, I just drip feed that to social media, so there's no pressure. It's like there's 40 images in the latest thing I released. If I do 2 a week, I'm no mathematician, but you're going to get quite a few weeks there, so I'm all sorted. I've got all the imagery ready to go, and I'll still showcase old stuff anyway, which I recommend everyone should. Nothing wrong with that. With the attention span we have now, people don't realize it's old anyway. So yeah, I much prefer doing it that way. I feel like no pressure. It's like I just go do my thing, keep drip feeding the existing stuff, and then when I release some new stuff, and that way I feel like people can just sit down and enjoy it and take it in as a whole. And okay, that's what he's been doing the last 4 or 5 months. That's what he's been thinking about, and just view it as one body.
No, definitely. It also strikes me, I know you're influenced a lot by Mark Adamus, but he has a very similar approach to how.
I always liked he would do that. He would just disappear, and then this is going back to like 2013, 2014, and then suddenly you check his website and there'll be suddenly 20, 30 new photos, and it was like, wow, look at this is great, and then he'll disappear again. And I've always enjoyed that. I found it much more enjoyable to just go and check it all out at once. It's a good way to do it. And I know a few guys do it this way now. And I recommend it. Just comes down to, what your photography is and what you're trying to do with your work and everything. But for me, I've been doing it this way for probably 5-6 years now. And I couldn't do it any other way. Every now and then I will go shoot something and maybe process it and share it a week later. That will happen every now and then. And that will be if it's just something that it's just a one-off thing, that was probably current in that time. And I can't be bothered waiting to release it with a grander body because maybe it's not a part of a theme or something. So that will still happen sometimes. But generally I like just doing it this way and just chip away and take my time, enjoy the process.
So, Will, if we go back to the mountains themselves, you talked about them being kind of your core inspiration. Do you want to speak to the qualities about that environment that really speaks to you, and what you're particularly drawn to in those environments?
For me, if you push the magnifying glass there, Luke, it should bring that.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, mate. Yeah.
No, you're right. Mountains. The first time I saw proper mountains was on that European trip that I mentioned years back when I first just handled a camera. It was in Switzerland, and I was floored by it, but I wasn't trying to photograph them back then. It wasn't until 2013 when I went to Yosemite National Park. That's when I properly tried to photograph mountains, and they just spoke to me in a way that nothing else in nature had ever spoke to me before. And I think one of the things is I'm just so humbled in their presence because they're so much grander than me that, you got to look up at a mountain, and the act of looking up instantly reminds you that you are in a smaller place. You are a smaller member of the environment here because you're having to look up, and there's just this sense of humility. There's a reverence there by having to look up. And of course, we've all seen what happens when you get light and atmosphere and snowdrift and all that magical stuff happening. And it just absolutely, it's what moves me on the inside beyond what words can even express. So it's just, I love the ocean and waves, but mountains themselves just, they move me at the core, unlike anything else. So I truly enjoy photographing mountain scenes.
And you say you look up to the mountains, but that's not always the case. So you do like to get up into the air as well. And you really do try and get yourself in the right position to get the shots that you've pre-visualized. I know you do this with the moon and these mountain peaks.
That became a bit of an obsession the last year or two, using the full moon rise. Like I said, it's happening tonight. So I'm always got my finger on the pulse of each month. And that image there was just about 12 months in the making, waiting for the weather window, because if you have too much wind or obviously cloud, it's just not going to work. And to witness that finally, that moment, it's pretty humbling. So, that's what I'm always thinking about in my mind is, like I said earlier, it's that curiosity. It's a childlike curiosity. I see it in my kids and I carry it with me today. It's just constantly saying, imagine if, or what if, and that just helps drive me and get me out there. You just never know what it's going to do. And that's the part I love is you can plan something to a T, but nature will always find a way to surprise you and remind you that we're not in control whatsoever. So I love that element of
particularly in the southwest New Zealand, mate.
Exactly. Yeah. So I've come pretty fond of aerials. I love, what the opportunities that can be opened up with aerial photography. So using primarily like a Cessna, shooting from a Cessna, and it just allows me to.
What conditions do you tend to go for your aerial work?
I'm mainly just worried about low wind, obviously, and light being able to get through and hit the landscape. You can see in that shot there's minimal sky. I'm not often incorporating too much sky into my aerial work. So I'm not too concerned about, I need to get a sky full of color or anything like that. I'm just primarily concerned about low wind. Where is the angle of the sun at that time of year at that given location? And do we have a clear horizon? So as that sun gets lower, are we going to get that light coming through? And
you tend to go evenings, I assume, being West Coast?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Sunset, typically I find I like shooting towards the sun. That's the longest. That one there is people ask me, do you use Photoshop and how much editing is involved? And the majority of my work is probably half-hour edits. But again, that's done over 4 months. It could be initial 20 minutes and then multiple sections of 5 minutes. But this one here, it's about 7 hours because that rainbow, it couldn't fit on a single 16 mil horizontal frame. So I had to do the vertical panorama stitch, but then you can imagine what happened to the foreground. It was just absolute bananas because you've done a vertical. So then I had to do a separate, same time, same place, but focus stack horizontal frame for the foreground. And then, just blend it all in and then just try to get the light right. It's really unusual that front light that was behind me. But that as a moment in time is just something that I'll never forget. That lasted almost 45 minutes, that photo. Cameras are down, videos, taking selfies, sit back, enjoy it. just something I'll never forget. And I'll just point out, one of the
5
funny
minutes from rainbow. I've never heard of that.
Well, the latitude, the latitude here, we're so low. So you've just got that low angle of sun and the mist sitting there. So whereas in Australia, sunrise and then an hour later it's too high and you just can't see. Once the sun gets above a 45-degree angle, you're not going to see that rainbow anymore unless you get up high and look down onto it. But the funny thing, if you look at the right-hand side of that rainbow, it seemingly stops and it's given it like an angled effect. And I've had people call me out and say rainbows don't do that because they're always, symmetrical and not angled. And I had to question and say, what's happened there? Was it a problem with the pano? And I went back and I've got video footage too. And it's just like an optical illusion. The bow actually does continue, but it just gets lost in the light in the water there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it actually had me going, yeah, what is going on there? Because that actually doesn't look right. But there's nothing I could do about it. But it's given it that weird, depth because it's like it's been pushed to the left slightly and it's going up the fjord.
Yeah, no, it's I love that about the shot. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's it gives that feeling of making you want to look down there rather than
it actually worked to my advantage in creating that that pull across. But
definitely.
at the same time, my brain's like, but rainbows technically would never appear that way. So it's like there's like this minor conflict in my head that happens. But amazing moment.
And the other thing you really chase is this sort of event here where you get the incredible cascade of water coming off the mountain sides. And I know you had a pretty hairy experience with that what about two or so years ago as well with the big one.
Yeah, that's right. They're still repairing roads here from that flood. But
Wow.
Fiordland,
I was actually over there at the time.
Oh mate, it's one of the wettest places on earth, the western coast of Fiordland. As you start to come east, the rain gets less and less and less. But when you get these heavy rain days, I just love getting in there. And this is what led me to be a purely handheld photographer. When I first moved here, I'd go out in a heavy rainstorm of 100 mil plus and think I could get out with a tripod and stand in a raging river in torrential rain and get these images. And I realized pretty quickly that, no, you can't use a tripod in this because you're just going to kill the camera. So I started experimenting with shooting handheld, and for more or less it's probably been 4 years now, every single image I've made except for the odd astro shot, which is maybe 2 in 4 years, has been handheld. So it's completely revolutionized my shooting, my workflow by being in these environments. And now I just can't use a tripod anymore because it just restricts me too much. But I never realized that until recently when I thought back and I'm like, hang on, that's how it all began, was having no choice, just being out in the elements. But that's what I love. I love feeling alive and feeling a little bit of adrenaline, even a bit of fear. Fear does help fuel me creatively. Again, that reverence for the mountains and those environments. And I like to have, where I'm standing here for this, for example, like at my back is a towering waterfall and a mountain that rises up another a kilometer high, and there's rockfall everywhere. And it's just always in the back of your mind that at any minute, something could happen here. A rock could come down, the river could suddenly swell up. And I like that though. That I like that little bit of adrenaline that I get when I'm out shooting.
That you need, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. I need it.
There's a saying, Will, if you're not living on the edge, you're taking up too much room.
And this is why I don't do intimate photography, because it just doesn't. I need to feel alive out there. I need to, and that's the beauty of art and in general, is that we all are drawn to different things and different percentages, and then we bring to the table our own unique perspectives and everything like that. And for me, I enjoy looking at, I don't really like looking too much at this type of photography, to be honest. I don't really look at other landscape photographers who do, say, dramatic scenery, and I'm like, wow, I kind of get burnt out by it. I actually like looking at quieter moments and street photography and abstract stuff. It's kind of refreshing to me. So I've got an appreciation for all of it, but when it comes to what I want to do with the camera, it's got to be something that kind of gets the heart rate up.
Yeah,
that's a focus stack. I never in my life thought that I would be 18 inches from a wild animal and be able to do a focus stack. Obviously handheld as well, but Yeah, that was the
Just
Kia.
2 frames then, because it would have been
Just two at F11. One of my personal goals is to incorporate the Kia into the landscape. It's pretty easy to photograph a Kia on the roof of your car, or use a telephoto and just buzz one. Yeah, buzz one as they're flying by. But my goal is to try and incorporate them. The Kia is my favorite animal. I
was going to say, can you tell us a good Kia story, mate?
Can you see? Am I still on camera? I've got a big.
I'll just hold on a sec.
Wow. Yeah, you totally do.
Talk again, Will, and you will be.
There we go. We'll take it all off, but just for you boys. But the Kia for me, it's the world's only alpine parrot, and most people know them for being cheeky and eating windscreen wipers. But what they represent to me is resilience. These guys are out there in the harshest of environments, and then at the same time, they're so joyful and they're lighthearted. So whenever I've been out there and had these encounters, it's just inspiring. They inspire me, and so it's a personal goal for me to be trying to incorporate them into the imagery like that. And I've got visions in my mind of what I'd like to achieve, and I think I'll get it eventually, even if it takes 10 years or more. But this is getting on that right track here, that type of image. I'm trying to think if I've got a specific story of one. I've had so many times where they've just landed on the camera bag, and they're literally dragging it away. And I've gone, all right, I'm going to have to really shoo you guys off now. And the other one is I'll wake you up in the morning. If you're in the tent, you'll hear that noise outside, and it's the well before sunrise, and they just start going off. And actually a pretty good alarm clock, to be fair. One of the funniest ones actually was one time just on the side of the road when my son was younger, I pulled over and had the door open, and one of them jumped in the car, and my son was in there and he started screaming because he was probably only 3 years old at the time. And Dad, it's in here with me. And I couldn't stop laughing. The Kia was probably just as horrified as well with the screen coming back at him. But it's pretty funny.
Yeah. We did have a question that came direct to me from a viewer about the moon photos. You've got quite a few beautiful full moon photos. Some of them, the moon's quite enlarged. Are they
single exposure is probably the question? And yes, Photoshop for me, the main tool is brightening and darkening is what I primarily would use Photoshop for. Now, I'm not opposed to, say, doing a sky replacement for one reason or another. But when it comes to one of the main subject matters, which is going to be the permanent structures like mountains, trees, the actual permanent structures, and then something like a rainbow, moon, or lightning, for me, I would have no satisfaction in enhancing that or adding it in general. So it's just different focal lengths here. So this is more around, this is about 35 mil aerial shot. So that's why the moon is obviously not so big. The one where it's above Mount Aspiring was around 230 mil, something like that from memory. So that's why you're always going to get the different sizes there. And I'm timing it around the sunrise or sunset, so the moon details are still visible. If you wait till the moon, so this was the same flight. So I shot that frame, and then on a different pass, I zoomed in tighter and lined it up with the summit as well. But if you wait till the sun goes down and then you try to photograph the moon, that's where you struggle because you're getting a lot more luminosity coming off the moon itself. And that's where people have to do an exposure blend. And in my opinion, they're very hard to pull off, and they almost always just don't look right. So that's why, plus I like the light. I like working with light. So the combination of getting the light on the landscape with the moon rising or setting is, what I definitely try and do. But you get about 12 opportunities a year if the weather's good, and typically the weather's not good. So it's pretty tricky to pull off, that's for sure.
Well, I think I brought it up in the last time we spoke about Fjordland, but I mean, to people that aren't familiar, it is really one of the most extremely wet places in the world. And when you're walking around, with electronic cameras in the middle of it, trying to get those waterfall shots, which you can't get to or be a part of unless you're in those conditions.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's quite an art and a science even to manage your equipment and to be able to get the kind of images that you do. Do you want to speak about that a little bit, Will?
Yeah, I wish I could say there was a trick or a technique, but honestly, if anyone knows me, I don't use a tripod or filters. I don't use any water case.
Micro towel in your pocket.
That's all I have. All I have is a blue micro towel, like a camping towel. and I just drape that over the camera, and eventually that gets 100% saturated, and then from there you're just tucking it under your shirt. But again, because I'm handheld, it means I can pull the camera out and bang, bang, shoot, and then got the shot, and it's only exposed for a very short window in time. If you're on the tripod, it's going to be a lot harder, and you'd probably want to get a rain sleeve or something like that. But yeah, that's just what I use, is a good sized towel, microfiber towel, and I just drape it over there, and then off we go. Now, obviously, if I'm out hiking in that and I'm going quite a distance, the camera just stays in the bag and covered up, and then it's not coming out until the critical moment. And surprisingly, I've never really killed a camera from the rain, and I've got it wet so many times. I've just gone, oh, this has got to be dead. You know, you're looking at it like this could not be any wetter. There's no dry space left, but they hold up really good. And for all the hate that the Sonys would get about weather sealing, you know, I'll raise my hand and say that I think they're awesome, because I've been using the A7R models since 2013, and like I said, I had one model where I was ready to upgrade. It was about 4 years old, and I started thinking, why won't you just die already? You know, what do I have to do to kill you? Because I wanted an excuse to get an upgrade. So yeah, I think they're pretty tough, and they hold up well. But of course, you know, you still got to use your common sense, but so far so good.
Well, that's on the conversation. Do you have much relationship with different sponsors or groups, and how do you sort of foster and nurture them if you do?
No, it's a good question. And look, to be honest, when I first started doing this full time, I thought, oh man, I want to get sponsors. I want to get free gear. I want to get paid and all this. And a few things happened. Two things really. One, I realized that it's pretty rare to be paid by photography companies and even get gear to keep. All photography companies. This is me speaking to other professionals I know. And two, I didn't like any obligations that may come along with that, because sometimes the obligations just took away from what I was trying to achieve with my own imagery. So it's just something that I've never pursued. And, you know, like I have a relationship with f-stop, for example. I do have a relationship with Sony. If I ever wanted gear off f-stop, it would be fine. If I wanted to loan anything from Sony, but no, there's no real officials. It's just something that doesn't, to me, in my career, it's not something that I need, and it's not necessarily worth the investment in time. Now, of course, it's great to get the backing of big companies, everything. I'm not going to argue that, but it's just something for me personally that I've been able to do what I do without having to worry about it. Funny enough, I had a tripod sponsor for a few years, Vanguard tripods, and as I stopped using the tripod, just slowly the communication stopped, mutually, and there was no official like this is the end of the partnership. But yeah, I just, it's been the same tripod for probably 7 years now because it barely gets used. So it's obviously got.
Look, can you keep that photo there for a second?
I was actually going to ask about what bag you use, because I know how critical it is to get the camera out quickly and back in quickly if it's wet. So and f-stop obviously. You can zip it up and it's very quick and easy. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, they're good. And I've had the Ajna model. That was the first one I got. And that's all I've had since I got it, probably, I don't know how long ago now. And like I said, they've said, what gear do you want? We'll send you something. And I got another bigger version, but I just don't use it. Or they're good bags. I resisted getting one years back because everyone was talking about them. So I was like, I don't want one of them because they're too popular. And then when I finally got one, I was like, yeah, they are pretty good. They're so rugged. Mine has taken a beating and it still goes fine. So yeah, good bags.
I got one of Lukey's hand-me-downs and I freaking love it.
They're good, man. They're good. Sometimes I get clients that have these, obscure and it's all messy. And I'm like, just get an f-stop, just obviously there's other brands out there that are good, but yeah, once I find something I like, I just kind of stick to it. And it's like with restaurants, I just get ordered the same thing every time. Exactly.
Life's too short to be annoyed by a bag that doesn't work for you. I reckon same with tripods and everything. So
it's so true. Definitely.
Will, I was just sitting with this photograph, and one of the first questions I had is, if people aren't familiar with that terrain, it's incredibly difficult terrain to get around. No. And, I noticed that a lot of your images are really low down or really high up or somewhere in between. And I'm sort of like, the difference and the effort it takes to get from one of those places to the other is is pretty extreme. Sometimes you get dropped off with choppers in high areas and maintain traveling around those higher ridge areas, or because there's not a lot of access points, or I mean, it's really extremely remote terrain, and only very experienced people even consider doing extended trips out in those areas.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
So
do you want to speak a little bit about the sensibilities of that terrain and the challenges?
exactly. So I'd rather do everything on foot if I can. I'm always seeking to. Then there's no better experience than putting in the hard yards, and because you're going to see stuff along the way on the journey than you say if you get a helicopter somewhere. But there's probably a good 24, or maybe not even that many images in the portfolio that were created from utilizing a helicopter to access a specific zone, and then from there making a base and using that to hike out of. Now, in Fjordland or just the New Zealand national parks, there are limitations on where the helicopters can land. There's still wilderness zones where it's no landing. And what I'll typically do, because look, using it, it's not, I'm conflicted with it, to be honest, because some of this stuff will never be documented or seen ever unless it's, I don't know, I've just had this weird spot where, and it's expensive. It's obviously it's got a nasty carbon footprint. So sometimes what I'll do is, with New Zealand here, the overriding body that looks after the national parks is called the Department of Conservation. And the Department of Conservation is probably the heaviest users of helicopters in the whole country, because what they are primarily doing is protecting the flora and fauna of the land. Fiordland itself is so vast and inaccessible. The only road is from Tianau to Milford. That is just on the extreme eastern edge. Everything, the other 99.8% is no roads, minimal tracks. It's incredibly, hard to access. And even if you said, I'm going to do it on foot, you'd still probably need a boat along with a 20-day window to get to some of these spots. So Department of Conservation, they're often using helicopters to get out and do the work that they need to do. Then there's fishermen, cray fishermen, commercial guys that are going out. And so sometimes I'll try and tie in a trip, what they call a backload, like, we got to go pick these guys up out, blah, blah, blah. Sweet, I'll jump on if you can land me, am I able to get landed here? And then 5 days later, I'll just have to get a pickup or something like that. So that's one thing I'll try and do. But yeah, so definitely there is some, let's say this spot here, this is down the far end of Doubtful Sound. So the only way you could get here is chartering boats, and then you'd have to charter a boat privately, and then getting up the hill, that would be a nightmare, but not impossible, no worries at all. But I'm a family man and time is everything. So to go out and do some of it on foot and, say charter a boat or something like that, it's like, it's probably more expensive, and the time is now fivefold what it could have been if you flew in. So yeah, some of them might not even be on the ground. They could be an aerial shot that I've done very low to a ridge line. This is on the ground, this one, by the way. I had my friend Mark Adamus, actually, we were here together for this moment. But yeah, so some of it is like that. But yeah, don't get me wrong. I feel like sometimes I'm just torn sometimes with, like I said, just doing aerials and helicopters. And something that I'm looking into at the moment, I found a good program here, planting native trees and just trying to give back a little bit. It's just something that's been on my mind lately. So
you explored, I mean, it's a bit too extreme in terms of heights and environments for drone work. And I don't know what Doc's like with permissions for that sort of thing. Yeah. Have you explored that at all? So
yeah, one, you can't use a drone in the national park unless you apply for a permit for that given flight, not for the given year, but for at 4:00 on Tuesday, I want to fly here for 20 minutes, blah, blah. And also, I don't own a drone, and I just don't like using them because I lose an emotional connection with the landscape, because I'm not looking at the scenery. I'm looking at a screen. So it's just, for me, not a tool that I like to use. Not saying you can't get a great image with them, but it's just not. And also, again, this area here is probably over 100 kilometers from the road. So it's like, even if you had a drone, most places you're going way outside of where a drone could fly anyway. So it's just not even an option, really. A lot of the aerials I do will be from the Cessna, though. So the Cessna, is much smaller aircraft.
Is that only for cost reasons or availability down there?
Cost primarily, but also even from a carbon footprint perspective, it's nowhere near as heavy as like chartering a helicopter or something like that. So definitely, and I just like being in a plane as opposed to a helicopter. It feels a bit more natural. So this is shot from a Cessna, for example. And yeah,
one thing with these shots, Will, is that your dynamic range and dealing with the highlights and shadows here is just about as extreme as it gets.
Yeah.
How do you find handling that, and do you have any tips or anything for the viewers about that?
Yeah, dynamic range is the one thing that is critical to the photography that I do, because I love shooting towards the sun. I love the way the light pulls us in, and having backlit objects to create mystery and depth. And yeah, it's obviously an absolute nightmare, but thankfully the dynamic range on our sensors now is so good. I'm just exposing for the highlights primarily, and then just raising up the shadows accordingly. And yeah, it's pretty rare for me to ever, like, this is an aerial, you're not going to do 2 exposures anyway. Obviously you can't bracket while you're moving along at 100 kilometers an hour, but yeah, it's just exposing for those highlights, and then we bring those shadow details up later on. Of course, once that sun gets even lower and it gets more extreme. So I'm often always shooting light on the landscape somewhere. So you can see on the left-hand side there is a bit of light hitting the mountains and everything. That one just looks better because it's creating a sense of depth and breaking up the tones. But also it's going to help dramatically when I need to start lifting up those shadow details. But yeah, it is extreme, but thankfully now, the technology we have, it doesn't matter what brand you're shooting with the dynamic range.
What's your favorite kind of aerial lens combos?
Probably I never had a mid-range zoom until I started focusing more on aerials. So I picked up a Tamron 28 to 75 2.8 because it was a lower price point than the Sony equivalent, and that's probably my main workhorse for aerials, the 28 to 75. 16 to 35, it depends what I'm flying in. If it's a helicopter, I'll be on the 16 to 35. I'll use a helicopter on the, like I said, rare occasions, but if I do, I base that flight around getting angles that look like I'm on the ground and I'm emphasizing some kind of foreground matter. When I'm in the plane, I'll shoot a scene like this where everything's far away and I'm doing more compressed, either mid-range or telephoto type imagery. So it comes down to, what I'm flying, what I'm trying to achieve. But I'd say the mid-range, the 28 to 75 is probably the main workhorse.
You're shooting mainly oblique. You've got to keep your aperture to a certain degree closed down. What are you sort of aiming for?
Not so much for these telly shots, they're still so far off in the distance, so you somewhat have that flat plane. This shot here, for example, was probably f5.6, but it's tack sharp all the way through. And that would be because it was just so far off on the horizon that the cameras obviously just regarded it as just being a flat scene.
And you focus on the foreground aspect, I suppose, if you had to pick a point to focus.
Typically, probably more like the mid-ground still, just in between that, just in case.
Split the difference.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, I very rarely will have a problem with that. It's only if obviously your proximity to the first subject matter is very close. Now you're going to have an issue and you want to close down. If there's a lot of light around, the helicopter is good because you can pretty much hover. If you scroll up, actually.
That's the other thing. You could do HDR work with a chopper that you can't really do in a Cessna.
Go up a bit more, Luke, to the Milford Sound waterfall one on the left, right up the top.
I've just clicked on the wrong one there.
No, you're right. But yeah, like with a heli, you can be there. You can pretty much shoot at 40th of a second. If it's slowed right, just keep going, mate. Right up, right to the top.
I remember the one you mean.
The Bowen Falls.
So many crazy shots here, man.
Keep going. It's going to be right. Pretty much
the top there.
Hang on, it's catching up. There it is on the left.
This one,
top left.
Oh, top left.
3 down, top left.
I'm getting confused.
Stop.
Is it this one here? Or is
left 2 and then up 1.
That one. Yeah. I can't see the waterfall in it. So
that's the only problem with the layout like that, because it's a vertical. So, this, for example, no wind in a helicopter, literally an 8-minute shoot. I just waited until we had the fresh snow on the peak, waited for the specific time of year where the sun does what it's doing there, where you get the blast of light down the fjord. There's only a few times per year where you can get that. And just hovered right in, but we're barely moving here. So I can just shoot 16 mil and be, 50th of a second. No worries at all.
Same time.
No, I don't bracket. No, still no need to bracket. This was extreme dynamic range, obviously, but still just a single exposure.
Okay.
No need to bracket still. Pretty rare for me to have to do a bracketed shot, to be honest.
I find that I bracket and then virtually never use the other one. So it's nice to have safety, but it takes up the hard drive.
It's amazing what you can pull out of the shadows. It's just, it's ridiculous, isn't it?
Well, particularly with the Sony sensors.
Are you on the A7R4 now, Will?
Yeah, I've got the 3 and 4, and I just use them depending on what lens I need. So I just leave one lens on one. And actually, if it's going to be a shot like this, I tend to go towards the 3. Just the noise performance is a little bit better, I've noticed, with the less resolution. Quite noticeable, actually. So if I've got to do a lot of shadow recovery, I will see that the 4 puts a bit of noise in there much sooner than the 3. So if I know it's going to be a big lift on the shadows, then for sure I'll just pull the 3 out. But either way, they're both
any advantages of the 4 then? Because that's
bigger res.
The extra res is nice. I like having when you do a print, it's always good to, but even not just printing, if you need to do a bit of cropping or stretching or something in post, it's nice knowing that you're not just cutting away 50% of the resolution or something like that. So it is good having that extra bit of resolution there for sure. And
I thought the 3 was already an incredible camera, and when the 4 came out, I was almost a bit annoyed because it was much earlier in the release cycle, and there was definitely an upgrade. But I'm really looking forward to the 5, which should be out this year. Not that I know, but it's due for it. Because I've actually had that a bit longer to work on it, I'm very much crossing my fingers that they might have in-camera focus stacking, because that bothers me, and that would probably be
gets really annoyed when I pull up my
handholding as well, for it to bracket off a whole series of focus stacking, because that's what I was going to ask as well. I mean, obviously, if you're on a tripod, focus stacking is relatively straightforward, but when you're hand-holding, do you find I guess you could only really ever do two images as a stack?
Easy, mate. 9+ if I had to, but I'm go back and we'll pick a focus stack one out of the gallery. But there we go, right hand side with the fern curving over, for example.
Yeah, that's a great example. I love that one too. Great.
That's only going to be 2 frames anyway. But look, the whole process is just don't dance around like a maniac. If you're sitting there nice and calm, if it's only 2 frames, I just leave it on autofocus and I just focus on the immediate foregrounds matter, in this case the fern, recompose, take the shot, and then quickly push the shutter and take the second shot, which would then focus in the background. So I've got the 2 frames. The amount of movement in that is probably going to be the same amount you'll get on a tripod with focus breathing. If I need more than 2, I'll just flick it to manual, and it's just a simple matter of shoot, twist the barrel, shoot, and you can just go bang, 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 bang as you're just twisting the barrel. And as long as you're comfy and, again, not dancing around on tippy toes, then the frames are so similar. And Photoshop with the auto align, I've never really had a problem with it, to be honest. So
I guess the more wide angle lens you use, the more challenging it's going to be. If you're shooting tele, then you've got a flatter plane of.
Not really, because when you're on the tele handheld, the movement in your hand is so pronounced. It's actually worse. Yeah. So
okay, interesting.
When I'm on a 12mm, I could shoot at 1/3 of a second and be sharp almost every time, because the width is so wide that the movement is just negligible. But once we start zooming, it starts to get worse and worse and worse. But pretty rare for me to have a focus stack zooming in. It's just more when I want to emphasize that front, those, like in a shot like this, where I deem it necessary to get those sharp points on the fern.
You got any favorite bits of glass, Will?
Oh man, I'm not a big gear person. So I've got the 16-35 2.8, which I do like, and that Tamron 28-75. And the Sony 100-400, and that's it.
It's a beast, that lens.
Yeah.
And the other thing I was going to ask, Will, because if you shoot handheld, you just have so much better knowledge of shutter speeds that you can actually get away with than most people. Do you have like a bit of a golden rule in terms of maybe say it's 16 versus 35, what your minimum can get? Because it's so hard to tell these days with how much the image stabilization does and things
exactly.
like that.
And it's hard from a teaching perspective because everyone's going to have different hand movement and cameras. So if you want to shoot like I do, you need a stabilized body, inbuilt image stabilization, IBIS on a mirrorless. If you have a DSLR, my rule is whatever your focal length is, you really need to match that or be faster. So you're at 20 mil, you want at least 20th of a second or faster. With the mirrorless, I tell my students, keep that rule in mind. You're at 15 mil. When you get to 15th of a second, you'll probably be fine 100% of the time. And understand that you can go lower, but you're in what I call the danger zone, where if you're not calm and relaxed, it's probably going to be soft. So for example, for me, if I'm at 16 mil, I know that if I'm at 1/10 of a second or 1/8, I've pretty much got 100% success rate. Anything going lower than 1/8, right down to about a quarter, it could be 50% success rate. I might have to really reposition myself or, lean against a tree or whatever, something like that. So it gets right into that, borderline type territory. So really and then of course you're on a telephoto, you're at 100 mil, you probably want 100th of a second or faster. But if you got the mirrorless with the stabilization in the body, you can break that rule, but understand that every time you go lower and lower and lower, the risk of blurring the photo goes up more. But I've shot 400 mil at 60th of a second. And I've surprised myself, you go far out, it works, So it really just comes down to your heart rate. It's like using a rifle. You just want to be completely relaxed. If I'm cold and I've walked up a hill, I've got to wait for a minute or two, get the heart rate down, chill out. But, I never have a problem shooting handheld. I've never encountered, aside from Astro, obviously, but I just don't have this shot here, for example, is off the back of a boat.
Yeah.
I just did one frame at say 50th of a second, which was tack sharp on the background. But at 50th of a second, the water flow was not very appealing to the eye. So then without moving, I just simply slowed the shutter down and closed the aperture and did a few exposures at 0.4 seconds, for example. And then in Photoshop, I just blend the two together. So sometimes and this is the whole thing.
I was going to say, I couldn't understand how you had the background so sharp on the
but if it's a river or something and a waterfall, I can shoot 1/8 and I get the result, single exposure, all good. But sometimes like this scenario, 1/8 is just not slow enough. I've got to go slower. I could do a 5-second one if I wanted to, and you just blend it in later on. And the argument then becomes, okay, what is worth the time in the field, getting a tripod out, setting up and doing it just in a single shot? Or do you just want to quickly bang it out handheld in, say, bracketing mode or just manually adjust it? And then in Photoshop, you just quickly just blend the layer together. And for me, I'd just rather obviously on a boat, you're not getting a tripod out anyway. But there's other scenarios in the field where I'm like, you could get the tripod out, but I can't be bothered going and getting, I'm just here right now. All I got to do is shoot, slow the shutter down, shoot again. And if that one's not sharp on my subject matter, but the water looks good, sweet. That's probably going to be about 60 seconds in post to just blend in that slower water in the places that I want it to be. But, from a teaching perspective, I don't expect, and I don't even teach people to shoot. I show them what I do and I help them if they've got the mirrorless, but I'm still, tripod is much safer for a lot of scenarios, and especially if you're not competent in the post-processing. But for me personally, it's just been a game changer, and I just can't imagine ever going back. And I imagine as we keep moving forward with technology, the stabilization will only get better again. And I've used like those Olympus cameras, and because they've got a micro 4/3 sensor, such a tiny sensor, I could do 1 second exposures, tack sharp, handheld every single time, and then gave it to my client who'd never shot handheld before and was thinking no way, and she was doing 1 second because the stabilization on that little sensor, they could just stabilize it. Of course, unfortunately, the image quality on those cameras is not the greatest, but I imagine moving forward, the full frame bodies that we use, the stabilization will probably just get better, that we'll be able to just shoot similar type things. And for me, it's an integral part of my workflow, really.
That's a really great explanation, and you know, I've often wondered about that, and how you've been, you know, you get those beautiful streaky waterfalls, and still shows a lot of that motion, and so there has to be quite a lot of control there to be able to nail those shutter speeds while also, you know, having a sharp image.
Why don't you jump into the if you go to the new work for the seascapes, because there's going to be more like slow shutter stuff in there, I guess,
cool.
to reference what we're kind of talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's and proximity to your subject matter really helps. If you're really close, then the slow shutter, it doesn't have to be as slow because the movement's more dramatized compared to when you're further back. I'll just tell a story on this one.
A good example for a slow shot, but
not
the
quite.
birds and the drama. I mean, it's just beautifully captured like that, and it's just having that wave breaking like that completely changes the dynamic.
Yeah. When I shot this a couple of months back, it was very spontaneous. I just turned around and saw the framing and everything that was happening, and it was just a 3-minute window where it all just happened. And I remember looking at the shot thinking, yeah, I like that. And when I got home and was processing it, and it's amidst my folder of seascape work, and it was just one that whenever I would edit just bring it up, there was something about it I just couldn't figure out. It's pretty flat light here. It's just overcast, and I almost canned it, you know, even though I knew there was potential in the shot, but a part of me was like, nah, I don't know. And finally, right at the end, I kind of started from scratch with the edit. And the whole point of bringing this story up is not only is it a shot that I always liked from the beginning, but when I released my new coastal work, you know, a week or two ago, this is the one shot that I've had over a dozen people privately message and mention that this was their favorite. And I just thought, man, it's so funny that it was just, I think back to music sometimes with bands, you know, there's always that song that ends up being kind of the favorite for people, and it ends up being the one that the band admits that it was not going to make the cut. And I felt that it was like with this one, you know, and it's just funny the way that certain things will resonate with people, and you can never, I don't shoot for anyone else but me. I'm kind of selfish, you know, I'm just going out there. This is, you know, very personal to me. And then when you find out what does resonate and what doesn't, it's always interesting. And often it's probably the stuff, and you guys will relate to this, but it's what you probably don't expect half the time as well. You know, I wasn't really thinking this would be, I knew I liked this one, but I wasn't really expecting other people to necessarily like it so much. And then the ones that I thought people would maybe say was a favorite, just it doesn't get a mention. And it's an interesting thing.
I saw a few people resharing it myself, and then when I saw it, I was like, oh wow, yeah, that's definitely a great moment there. And
you know what's funny about this, thanks Luke, there's actually not much slow shutter stuff. So when I did all this coastal work, I consciously wanted to have a fresh approach. You know, growing up on the south coast of New South Wales, the first 2 years of my photography was slow shutters and sea stacks. And going back to doing seascapes here recently, I just wanted to purposely try and see what else I could do with the ocean and interpret it really just through fresh eyes, essentially. I just didn't feel like playing, you know, the same tricks necessarily. It's not a conscious thing. It's just you mature. I wouldn't even call it maturing, because there's nothing wrong with doing a slow shutter, but it's just interesting how your taste and your eye changes over time. And as I put this collection together, this series, I was like, wow, there's not too many that just has the classic slow shutter with the waves breaking in. There's probably, you know, a handful or so, but.
And some people might turn away from including introduced species as well, but I take it that, you know, if it's beautiful, it's fair game. Mate,
you know, like I'm an introduced species, and so is every other white person on this island. So yeah, I showed my mate that one with the lupin, and he's like, oh, cool, bunch of weeds. And, you know, my theory is if it looks nice, I'm going to photograph it. And I don't care what it's regarded as. If my eye likes the look of it, then I'm going to put it in there at the end of the day. So, yeah, when I saw those lupin in that area, I was like, wow, I'd love to incorporate those in the frame for sure. But yeah, they get a bit of hate here with the Kiwis. They don't like if it's not native, they don't want to know about it. They don't want to look at it.
Be on the possum level.
I got a few jumping on me a little while ago for some, what do you call it? What are the ones on the northwest coast? See something or other.
Sea spurge.
Yeah, that's it. I thought, geez, it looks beautiful in light. I got this great shot. I'm so proud of it. And then I had like 5 people going, what the hell are you photographing weeds for? I'm trying to get rid of it. And I was like, oh, shit.
Oh, yeah, it's I don't know, man. Like, just yeah.
You've clearly done a lot of exploring too, Will, in terms of getting to some of these spots. I mean, there's so many sea stacks here that I've just don't recognise from anywhere else.
Man, like this spot here is so. This coastline, the only people that have probably seen this is fishermen, but not from this perspective. They're just out.
Yeah, that's one of these questions. How the hell do you get to these places? How do you choose where to go?
Oh,
They're
man.
not asking where they are, but yeah, just
involved?
in terms of, yeah.
Yeah, it got a bit sketchy trying to get to this particular spot here. I got a bit uncomfortable, to be honest. But this coastline in particular, you could spend 5 days getting to within about 10 kilometers of these. So 5 days to get 10 Ks close to this spot. And then the rest is, you know, you're in no man's land, no tracks, just complete wilderness. It's going to be like a 25-day return trip. So I came here with Mark Adamus. We did some scouting back in 2017 because we just looking at the maps, we could see there was potential in this specific coast, you know, a good stretch of 30 kilometers. You could just tell on the map that there's something there that's good. And yeah, we utilized a helicopter to do initial scouting and returned a few times since. So when I've gone here, like this particular trip I did a few months back, and it was go in with your gear, and not even at this beach, you know, I'm still a kilometer from this beach where I camped, but you go in, set up camp and embrace the sandflies that are there. And then, you know, the world is your oyster type thing. But this coastline, in my opinion, and even Mark's, who's had more experience than, you know, myself, we both agree that it's probably the most photogenic as far as sea stacks go. I've got a lot of these in my portfolio, but you wouldn't even recognize them because they look so different from different angles. And then 500 meters from here is about 12 other sea stacks. And then another kilometer from there is another 20. And it's just a coastline that's unlike anywhere else. But the one thing is, yeah, those sandflies. And you think you've experienced sandflies when maybe you've been to Milford Sound, you've had a few on your hand. They get so bad here that it will literally drive a man insane. We had to have, I bring a face net, you got to have gloves on. And it was pretty hard because I was there in summer recently, and the sun 6 a.m. and it doesn't set till 9:30 at night. So you've got a good 14 hours of daylight to kill, and the sandflies are just chewing you up. So I just had to wait in the tent, you know, and just hide. It was actually, it's pretty hard to deal with, but so it keeps people away, that's for sure. But yeah, as far as sea stacks go and just coastline, that's, you know, a sea stack for me is like a mountain. We're looking up at it. I just love that type of subject matter. And yeah, it's really as good as it gets. This place, on the other hand, is a little bit more popular on the West Coast.
Well, I guess it's because it's so accessible. Well,
Exactly.
it's not like immediately apparent how to get there, but there's enough information. I actually went there when I was over a couple of years ago, and it's just as amazing as I could, you know, as the pictures, especially with the starfish there. And then so obviously it's just that sort of theme, but amplified in those spots that you've been finding. So
that's just spectacular, man.
And this stack here, it's amazing.
And to be in such wilderness, and yeah, like I said, you might have to take a helicopter if you ever get there, or a boat. You know, you could probably try to hitch a ride on a fishing boat and then kayak in to the shore, or you could sea kayak around actually. But to be there and be that exposed to the elements and know that you're on your own now, you know, it's something goes wrong here, the next civilization is 50 kilometers away, if not more. And that gets me in the creative space as well. I feel like I'm really in tune to everything that's happening there in the environment. Yeah, it's pretty special. It's and like, you know, the sandflies, I do mention them, but to me, it's just all part of the experience, really, at the end of the day.
Oh, you have to come to a position where you're like that, or you go insane.
Oh, yeah, exactly. You got to, some people will complain they get a handful on them, and I'm like, man, that's, you know, it's not that bad. But yeah, down on that coast, it is on another level, that's for sure.
Certainly, if something that I struggle with when I'm over there, and I react to them pretty badly.
Well, sometimes they come up in the shot when you're doing a semi-slow shutter, and you get black lines everywhere. And, you know, that is really difficult. Or if the light is hitting them, they're golden streaks. And you got to take multiple frames to get a clean shot.
I guess with the shutter speeds you run at too, that would be much more likely as well. So
yeah, exactly, because it's, you know, 1/8, 1/10 of a second type thing. So it's tricky.
No, it's amazing. It really is.
Isn't there a certain Māori mythology about them?
Yeah, the mythology is that they were put there to keep people from staying too long, keep people moving. So, the places are so beautiful. We don't want people to set up here for too long. That one, actually, that was a focus stack with a mid-range zoom. You know how I said I don't stack too much? That was actually 75 mil handheld focus stack. And that sunset, I was on a trip with the family, and the sun doesn't set in summer here till like 9:40 at night. I could see it was going to be a banger because the coast was clear, but all this cloud there. And I said, come on, I want to get out on this beach and it's going to be spectacular. And of course it was. And it was pretty cool because the kids are out on the beach running around and my wife's there just staring at the light and I'm up here doing this. And so when I look at some of these photos, that's what comes back to me is the stuff behind the scenes, as for all of us. So yeah, I have fond memories of this one. And then driving back late, an hour and a half to get home, and a big deer in the middle of the road that I almost crashed into. It was a close call. If you go to the left, there's a cracker sunset. That's the same sunset, far left.
Oh, yep. This one here?
Yeah. So that's the same sunset. So after I did that other angle, then I quickly ran down and just shot that one off as well. And I said to my wife, because she was kind of next to me here, and I was like, it's so hard to do justice to the beauty of it, and it's what I've been doing for 10 years, these type of stuff. But I was just looking at it like, man, what do you do? And I just wanted to try and keep this one real simple, just water, light, and a bit of sand. And, I felt like I was going back to the roots a little bit. This is what I would have done when I first picked the camera up, is just sit right at the shoreline and just photograph something like that. So yeah, actually quite.
We don't often see verticals of that subject matter, to be honest.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I think I like the way the foam's splayed out in the foreground.
What I also really do like about your series, and certainly some of this stuff that you've been shooting as well, is it's sort of, you started out shooting the coast, and then you moved to love of the mountains, and you're able to create these images in New Zealand that actually combines both of your loves there as well. Which is
I'm glad you noticed that, because that's definitely been on my mind. It was like, all right, the Southern Alps, they're so close to the ocean that very rarely do you have the opportunity to really see that, just the way the lay of the land is and the roads, and there's no trails or anything like that. So yeah, definitely spent time saying, all right, how can I combine the two, and where are places where perhaps, so if you go back, for example, there's another one. That's an aerial, by the way, that shot there.
Oh, right.
Yep. Yeah. So I specifically found a spot looking at the map.
How the heck did you get that angle was my first thought.
Yeah. Bit of research on the maps, and then a quick 15 minutes in and out. So if you go up, sorry, mate, there's just a couple more of the mountains and the water that are on your left now. It's a vertical above the sand dunes. Yeah, that one. So this was a spot that I looked for ages. Like, there's got to be an angle somewhere. The tricky thing with a lot of this is the proximity of, say, my foreground there to the mountain. That's Mount Cook, Mount Tasman in the back. It's over 80 kilometers away. And on the coast, there's a very high likelihood that you're either going to get cloud or just a coastal haze that blocks the view. So some of these shots, it was like painful trips, 8-hour drives and just getting shut down time and time again. And then to finally have it materialize is just incredibly rewarding to get all that. So that is a telephoto focus stack as well, actually. Yep. So I guess it does happen sometimes. Another one, if you just go back,
a moment that frames, Will, just
3, I think. I had to get the lower, the mid, and then the back. Yep. If you go top right hand corner, there's Mount Cook with the sea stacks and the waves. Yeah, that one. So that's Mochikiki there. That's the sea stacks where the starfish. I will never probably ever see that again in my life. That because that's over 120 kilometers away. And one morning out of 10, I just happened to see a glow on the horizon, and I thought, "What is that?" And sure enough, it was Mount Cook there. And 15 minutes later, it's gone. The next day was sunny, but it didn't matter. There was just too much haze, too much. You wouldn't even call it a hazy day, but it doesn't take much to block that. So yeah, this particular image for me just means a lot because of the rarity of the moment. And sure enough, someone will probably go there next week and just get these perfect conditions and see it. But the amount of times I've been up there, you wouldn't even know Mount Cook aligned behind those stacks. And for me, there it was 6 o'clock one morning, not another soul in sight, a storm swell still pushing in, which had been there for the last 2 days. And this is an 800 mil image.
Oh.
And yeah, mate, just like completely floored and humbled. And I went back to, because my wife and kids came on this trip. It was a bit of a holiday at the same time. And I'm all buzzed up at 6:30 in the morning. Look at this. And Renee's half asleep, like, oh, cool. Oh, you don't understand. I'll never probably see that again. It's just, you can't plan that if you try. There's so many little things that have to come together. So,
yeah, and I don't know if it's a focus stack or not, but I guess there'd be so much thermal haze anyway.
Unfortunately, yeah, like Cook is a bit soft. It's just impossible with that the atmospheric distortion, and it is a stack for the foreground. The very front wave down there, was like a separate quick exposure. So because it was just going to be out of focus otherwise. So focus stack as well to put it all in.
It's super hard. Like, a lot of respect just to try and make a shot like that work with dealing with so many layers and close and far.
Yeah, sometimes it's like a puzzle. I've got one in Patagonia of Fitzroy, and it's a vertical, and it's extreme gale force winds creating these massive waves bigger than what these are basically in the glacial lake. And it's similar type shot, but vertical. And it was like a 4-shot stack because of the compression and how shallow your depth of field becomes when you're zooming in that far. And to me, it's just like this puzzle in my head where I'm just trying to tick off getting those pieces and then to bring it together, get home and then eventually piece it all together. And it's just the only way you can do it. If I was an artist with a brush, you just sit there and bang, and just put it all in. But with the camera, we're limited in regards to that single click in that given moment. But thankfully with, technology now, you can do, as I said, piece together that puzzle, and that's what the eye was looking at, essentially. Yeah,
no, that's it. No, that's beautifully done. I also was going to ask too, if you've been connected with or inspired by Andres Apps, because I'm familiar with some of his work, and I can definitely either see some themes or inspiration, or at least similar subjects, I suppose. Certainly with a shot like this, given I'm assuming it would be too far from where he lives, or that sort of general area.
Or West Coast in general. But I've got a lot of respect for Andy and what he's done here in the New Zealand landscape, across probably 3 decades now or something like that.
3 decades.
It's definitely a different vision and approach to shooting. It reminds me a bit of, say, like Ken Duncan. It's just a different era of photography with the technology in general. You didn't have the dynamic range, for example. Half of it was film. You'd never look towards the sunlight. So yeah, it's a different approach. I wouldn't necessarily say inspiration in that regards, but probably more just a respect there. And yeah, I've met him a few times, and he's a lovely guy. So definitely.
Yeah, we've actually approached to have him on the show, so we really hope.
Oh yeah, he'd be full of stories. You might have to pull teeth to get a few out of him, but yeah, he's loaded with them. That's for sure.
Here we go. Intimates.
An intimate, I couldn't resist that. I was enjoying the patterns, and then when I saw that little guy, I was like, wow, man, I'm a sucker for lone subjects. It's just, I resonate with the lone subjects so much. So that was pretty fun to shoot that, actually.
Yeah,
cool. I really like that one.
And we've had a couple questions as well on YouTube. I think we may have answered them anyway, but first one's about how do you find lifting the shadows introduces noise? And we did sort of discuss that with the A7R3 versus the A7R4.
So it does introduce noise, but it's not enough to be a huge issue. So let's say you shoot at ISO 100. By the time I might do a heavy shadow lift, the result technically could be something like an ISO 400. But in the camera, it's still so clean. I've always, from day one, shot for the highest standard possible, as if it could end up on a billboard, because you never know where those images could end up. And one of my little stories, just quickly, is back in 2014, Apple contacted me to license a Yosemite photo of mine. And I thought it was a hoax at first, and it ended up not being a hoax. It ended up being one of the wallpapers on every laptop in the world, Apple laptop. But the process of them getting that shot was they have to review the raw files. And it was an exposure blend. It was shot on the Canon 5D Mark II. And it couldn't handle the dynamic range. So it was shot in Yosemite, shot for the shadows, shot for the highlights. And I had to give them the raw files. And the whole time I'm thinking, I hope it's good enough quality and sharp. And obviously it ended up being just that. And I use that story to tell, like, say, my students, for example, that never put anything on social media unless it is of your highest standard. And there's multiple reasons for that. But one of them is the fact that you never know who could contact you and ask to have a print of it, a big canvas above their bed, or license it for a big campaign or something. And that's where Apple found that image. They found it on Instagram, all because I put hashtag Yosemite on that image when I posted it. And this woman's job was an image researcher. And it just would have been right time, right place. She just happened to see it. And imagine if when I shot that, because I know some people will post on social media stuff that maybe that it's got a lot of noise or even maybe out of focus, but you can get away with it on something like Instagram. And I just think that's crazy because, again, imagine if someone contacted you and you have to turn around and say, oh, sorry, Apple, that was ISO 5000 because I was just left it in auto mode and, you know, whatever. So I always just believe that any image you put out there, like social media is your gallery. It's your literal, like a storefront, and anything that's there should be something that you're truly proud of and you can back as far as quality goes. So that's why in the field, you know, some people say to me with the handheld stuff, oh, so it's sharp enough. And I'm like, there's no such thing as sharp enough. It's either sharp or it isn't. And if it's not, you will never see that image from me. So I never compromise in that regard with the sharpness and even the noise. I hate noise. It's either ISO 100 or 200 for me. And I cringe once in a blue moon, it might have to go up to like 640 if it's in a forest really dark. And even that is still pretty clean, to be honest. But yeah, I really just want to be able to print these 60 inches wide if I have to and not, you know, be nervous about what the result's going to be. So yeah.
Do you get worried about so we talked about you like your own camera shake from holding it, but in terms of subjects moving, do you have a kind of a limit to how much movement can be in the scene, or is it that the movement in the scene is the image? You know, why would I change that?
Yeah, that's a good point. Look, I don't really have much movement in my images unless it's falling snow, you know, sand getting blown across or anything or water, obviously. So it's not me to have like bokeh or like a abstract image where something's moving, but yeah, that would probably annoy me, to be honest. Let's say I've got some tussock in the midground. It's an astro shot and you've got tussock just completely fuzzed out.
Yeah.
Man, I just couldn't. Yeah, I want to be sharp from front to back because that's how I view the real world when I'm observing the real world. My peripheral vision is obviously out of focus, but then when I choose to admire a detail, I can see it. And that's somewhat what I want to bring with my photography, is that if someone wants to enjoy those wildflowers in the immediate far left corner, they can see it and it's sharp. And then if they want to look right up the other end, it's always sharp. And that's just for me. Now, I'm not saying, like I said earlier, I love looking at stuff that I don't do. But when it comes to my work, I'm pretty much a big on sharp front to back, depth of field, just carrying all the way through. And yeah, minimal fuzziness or movement for sure. Definitely avoiding that.
And then another question just around, I think we did address it, but how you shoot the moon on landscape to avoid it from blowing out.
Yeah, so doing that when the sun is still above the horizon. That way, one, you're going to get nice light on the landscape, but two, the moon is not bright at all, so you're not going to blow it out. If you wait for the sun to set, now you have to do a long exposure, and that's going to blow the moon out. Or it's just the fact that there's no light on the landscape, and the moon's, because there's no sunlight now anywhere else, the luminosity, the brightness of the moon is just so much greater than anything else that it's just naturally going to start blowing out when it comes to your exposure. It's just a dynamic range issue, ultimately. Everything else is dark and you've got a little highlight in the sky. So that's why if you look at my moon shots, the sun is still up because I've got mountains with sunlight hitting it. And look at your photographer's ephemeris or photo pills. Tonight, the moon rose 15 minutes after the sunset. So that actually wouldn't have been good. But yesterday, the moon is more or less full. It's like 98% full yesterday, something like that. Same thing in my book. And that rose about 15 minutes before the sunset. Perfect time to go and shoot it because you've got
we're
that.
Lucky we timed the episode well then.
Yesterday. Oh, I know. I literally thought about it. I was like, oh,
you guys, I'm out.
It's clear tonight. I was like, oh, no. But no, it's all good. It would have been a bit too dark for me. So I still like those shots, but they're just so hard to pull off technically. And it starts to look unnatural pretty quick. Yeah.
All right. And Yeah, the last question is what's the point of sandflies, but I think I don't know if there needs to be any comment about that.
I know. I often question that. I
Build
think, what is their
character.
place in the cycle of life here? What are they feeding? It's a it's a tricky one. Keep you moving, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we're sort of getting to the closing end of the session tonight, or our exploration of everything that's will. That sounded really lame, but anyway, do you have any final images that you'd like to talk about, or anything around that, or maybe even some recent workshops or products that you've been working on?
As far as images go, no, like all that coastal stuff really that's been occupied my thoughts for the past several months. So to get that out now, I actually do have a few new ones just from the last few days, some really cracker sunsets here, but no, image wise, not really. And even as far as workshops, I'm in a scenario where I've got a backlog from the past 2 years. So I've got very limited places moving forward and a bit of a list of people that are on they've been given a credit and they're waiting to get in. There's a bit of a tricky scenario there. So really for me at the moment is just still, I've got ideas for making more courses, more tutorials, just stuff that I think will be fun to, just get out in a curriculum and teach people that might want to learn specific things. So I'll be doing that. And I've got a YouTube channel.
Release your new Seascape one.
Yeah, exactly, mate. Actually, yeah, that's a good point. I might as well do a shameless plug. But yeah, so some of those images that we just pulled up then, like the ones with the lupin flowers, that Mochikiki beach with that sunset, they're all part of a big, like a seascape masterclass that I've just created. This thing goes for over 5 hours. And what I've done with this one was initially going through some of great seascape artists through time, whether it's painters, Ivan Ivazovsky, a Russian painter from the 1700s, and then my cousin Warren Keelan, Mark Adamus, breaking down what I enjoy about seascape photography, as well as sharing some older seascapes of mine, and then going into settings and the philosophy behind shooting the ocean, and then going out in the field with me and we capture shots like those ones I just mentioned, and showing my handheld techniques with focus stacking and working handheld, getting the streaked water. And then I go through and do all the post-processing. So some of these masterclasses I'm making now is I just design these as if, you've just picked up a camera, or even then you've been shooting for years, but you're like, how the heck do the people get these certain results? I just try to leave no stone unturned. So yeah, that just came out today and I've been working on that. It's amazing how long it takes. Like I said, that's about a 5-6 hour course. That 5 or 6 hours is 2 months worth of work, going to the locations, the filming, and the killer for me is the video editing, just trying to edit all that video is just absolutely brutal. And then not to mention all the hiccups you have in between where audio doesn't work. And one time I had the GoPro on my head as a point of view mode, and randomly it just fell apart, the headpiece. So then I had to hold it in my hand and I didn't realize the whole time I was covering the microphone. So when I played back the footage, it was just muffled the whole time like that. And oh man, and that's like an 8-hour drive, and to get, you have all these things, and then you put an ad up to sell the product and someone calls you a con artist. It kind of hurts my feelings. But anyway, so that's what I've been working on, and that's kind of where I'm at now at this point. What was that, Nick? Sorry, mate.
I was going to say, so where can people go to check out your masterclasses and your website and YouTube and all that? You may as well give it a
I'll give you a little plug, but if anyone wants to have a look at my photographs or inquire about a workshop, because I'll always have rooms somewhere or waiting lists, just go to williampatino.com and just contact me directly, or Instagram, just put my name in. And for the tutorials, it is a separate website, but if you just still go to williampatino.com, there's a tutorial button at the top, and then that links straight to the website, it's like williampatinophotography.com. And that's where the courses are. And all these courses that I have, these tutorials, you get a login, so you can just stream them, and they're all broken up into modules. So different lessons. So you know where you're up to. When you watch one, it kind of tells you you're complete. You can come in and out, and you can download them too. So you can download them to watch them on a plane or offline or whatever you like. And I'm pretty much everywhere, like we all are these days. Most of my work, though, it goes straight to the website, and then I just drip feed it to the social medias. But I try to stay pretty active everywhere. I don't know about Twitter. I think that's probably a bit too much for an old guy like me now, to be honest. That moves way too fast, but you'll still find me mainly on Instagram and Facebook, I think.
Yeah.
And just on the website, we've only been through a small portion of it. There's some great galleries that we won't get time to today, but the forest stuff and the waterfall stuff and the abstract stuff. I mean, you're selling yourself a bit short with the.
I was going to say, I saw abstract and textures, and I thought, oh, wait a minute, Will.
It's pretty. It's very, very nice work, and so yeah, even if you just go to have a look at some more pictures, I can tell you there's a lot more there on the website. So it's definitely worth a look.
Thanks, mate. Yeah. I've got to be honest, boys, since day one and even now, every photo of mine I look at, and you guys will be the same, you're your own worst critic, but I always just look at it and, Nick mentions the forest there and straight away alarm bells are going off in my head like, nah, it's not good enough. Like that, I can do better than what's in there because maybe the last stuff was 6 months ago, whereas now I think, and I've just always had that approach, I guess. It's just, I always feel like nature is showing me something better and better and better, and I'm not quite interpreting it in the best way possible, and that excites me as a photographer because I know that there's literally innumerable moments out there in nature to be seen and witnessed and experienced, and I enjoy the challenge of doing that. So you've just reminded me that I think I should work on forest shots later on the year as well. Just concentrate. I haven't really concentrated on themes before. I did a glacial project recently as well, looking down and photographing glaciers and just working with ice. That was the first time I've just narrowed down on a theme. Otherwise, it was always just a mixed bag. But now with this coastal stuff as well, I'm kind of liking this approach. So I think I'm going to be doing that moving forward. And it gets me excited. I think photography is just so great. And I think it's such an amazing hobby, and it's changed my life. And I've seen it change so many people's lives. And, I think when you remove so much of the noise around it from a social media aspect or a business aspect, whatever it is, and you look at what it can do for you as an individual and the way that you view the world, the way that you view yourself, it's a gift that keeps on giving. So anyway, I'm rambling on, but I appreciate you boys having me on, and anyone that's listened, I really appreciate it as well.
Absolutely.
So Will, being Kiwi, do you think they're legit that they're actually going to be opening up?
Yeah, so, this is the problem. The media, I've got people contacting me thinking the borders are opening tomorrow or something, but it's basically from like April, you could get here if you're from a visa-free country like Australia or America, but you're expected to self-isolate for 10 days. And then, or maybe that's July even. And then October, they're saying other countries, but again, they've still got this self-isolation thing. So no one is obviously expected to do that or will do that. But the government has said that that's a changing thing that will probably get brought forward. So really hoping that, they move it forward. At the moment, we've got Omicron spreading now. And basically, I believe it's just waiting for us to hit that peak. And then as we start coming down, they'll reconsider, hopefully, and, maybe open things up sooner. I believe it will happen this year, and hopefully it's sooner rather than later, because, I haven't seen my parents for 2.5 years now.
I haven't seen my family for 2.5 years, Will.
Yeah. My kids have doubled in age almost, my daughter, it's just, it's getting to a breaking point. There's a lot of pressure. Unfortunately, there's a lot of politics involved with all this, but I don't think they can remain shut for too much longer, that's for sure. It's been a big lesson in patience and just, looking for the positives in life instead of focusing on the negative.
You're a testament to, we use the word pivoting, which shows adaptability, self-belief and innovation. Kiwis are great innovators, and you're in the land of some of the best, and you're probably picking up some of those vibes somewhere along the way, Will.
Yeah, they're no joke down this way, mate, especially where I live. It's like going back in time a little bit. Everyone's a little bit harder and just kind of pull your socks up and get on with it type attitude. And it's been pretty healthy to be around, that's for sure.
Awesome. Well, we better let you go, Will, and it's a fair bit later over there than it is here. So we really appreciate your time and just your beautiful insights into the passion that you have. And it's very obvious how deep that passion is, and how you still have that beginner's mindset as well, in terms of going out there and seeing every day fresh, and the landscape can keep talking to you. So may it long continue, and thanks again.
Thank you, guys.
That was really special, Will. Thanks, brother.
Yeah. Thank you, mate.
Really appreciate it.
It means a lot. I got excited when you hit me up, actually. So it doesn't matter how many times you can do this stuff. For me, I don't take it for granted. So thanks, fellas. Appreciate it. And good job with the channel too. It's really good what you're doing. Awesome.
Oh yeah, it's just a labour of love, really, and can't really.
It always is, right? No.
Yeah, that's right. No, just being able to just have a great chat like tonight is just so fulfilling. So
it's healthy.
totally.
some of the guests we have coming up is just very exciting. So yeah, it's
look
great.
forward to it.
Yeah,
awesome. All right, guys. Thank you.
All right,
on that note, we'll go and what are we up to next week? Do we have I think we playing Dylan Toe next week, I think. So we'll announce that shortly. But yeah, we'll have Dylan Toe talking to us about his photography and his journey next week as well, which is a pre-record because he is a family man and wasn't able to join us on a Wednesday. So yes, that's pretty exciting. Thanks all and have a good